Sir, please don't fire me. I only took the leftover bread for my son. The hallway freezes around her words. The lights hum overhead, casting harsh shadows across Tiana's face. Her hands tremble as she clutches the tote bag to her chest, the outline of the bread unmistakable beneath the thin fabric. Flour dusts her company apron. Her dark hair escapes from beneath her cap, and her eyes, those deep brown eyes that once held dreams, now shine with desperate fear. Lennox Vale stands perfectly still, staring at her like he's seen a ghost rise from the grave. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The security cameras blink silently, their red lights like mechanical eyes watching this unexpected reunion. 8 years of separation collapsed into a single moment under the fluorescent lights of a corporate hallway. Have you ever walked past someone in desperate need, pretending not to see their struggle? That moment when your eyes meet, but you look away because acknowledging their pain might force you to do something about it? Tiana doesn't back away from Lennox's gaze, though her voice cracks with emotion. My son hasn't eaten properly in 2 days, she whispers. If you fire me, I don't know what will happen to us. Behind them, security guards watch the monitors, fingers hovering over the radio buttons. One word from the billionaire, and they'll escort her out. One tap on his tablet and her employee access will disappear, along with the only income keeping her child fed. But Lennox doesn't speak. He doesn't blink. He barely breathes. Because for the first time in 8 years, he's face to face with the woman he abandoned, the one whose love he sacrificed for ambition, the woman whose heart he shattered when he disappeared without warning, chasing dreams bigger than their tiny apartment could hold. And now she stands in his building, in his uniform, pleading for mercy over a $5 loaf of bread. Tiana, he finally whispers, her name falling from his lips like a confession. She flinches just barely, but enough that he feels it like a physical blow. Mr. Vale, she corrects him firmly, rebuilding the wall between them brick by emotional brick. Her eyes harden, but her hands still shake. She doesn't want his familiarity. She doesn't want shared memories. She wants survival. For her son, please, she adds, her voice dropping even lower. If you're going to fire me, just don't do it in front of my son. Something flickers across Lennox's face, a shadow of the boy he once was, before boardrooms and billion-dollar deals replaced late-night diner conversations. The security guard's radio crackles. Sir, should we escort her out? Tiana closes her eyes briefly, steeling herself for the inevitable. She's been fired before. She started over before. But this time feels different. This time, the cupboards at home are completely empty, and Malik's medication costs more than she makes in a week. No, Lennox says suddenly, his deep voice echoing in the hallway. Leave us. The guard hesitates, then steps back. Yes, sir. Tiana opens her eyes, confusion mixing with caution on her face. She adjusts the strap of her bag, the bread inside still warm against her hip, evidence of her crime. How old is he? Lennox asks, his question landing between them like a stone in still water. Tiana blinks. What? Your son, Lennox clarifies, his eyes never leaving her face. How old is he? The fluorescent lights buzz above them. A clock ticks somewhere down the hall. The world narrows to just these two people, standing feet apart but separated by years of silence. 8. She finally answers, the word barely audible. Lennox's breath catches. His shoulders stiffen beneath his tailored suit. 8 years since he walked away. 8 years since he last saw her. 8 years that suddenly feel like both an eternity and a heartbeat. 8. He repeats, his voice hollow. Something unspoken passes between them, a current of understanding that makes Tiana take a small step backward. His name? Lennox asks, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer will change everything. Tiana clutches the bag tighter, as if it might shield her from what's coming. Malik, she whispers. The name hits Lennox like a physical blow. He reaches out to steady himself against the wall, his usual composure crumbling. His eyes, Those same deep brown eyes that once promised her the world fill with a dawning realization. Malik, he echoes, testing the weight of it on his tongue. And in that moment, standing in the sterile hallway of the empire he built, Lennox Vale understands what his success has truly cost him. Because this woman didn't just steal bread from his company. She holds a secret that will shatter the carefully constructed life he's built. And the child she's protecting with such fierce determination, he might not be hers. Alone, Tiana can't hear anything except the pounding in her ears. 8 years of carefully constructed walls crumble as Lennox's eyes bore into hers. The bread in her bag feels impossibly heavy now, like she's carrying stone instead of flour and yeast. Her fingers grip the strap so tightly that her knuckles turn white. She's survived so much worse than this moment. Survived rude customers who treated her like furniture. Survived managers who cut her hours without warning. Survived nights crying silently in storage closets and mornings pretending everything was fine for Malik's sake. But nothing prepared her for facing Lennox Vale again. This moment feels like standing on cracking ice, knowing the ground beneath her is about to give way. How many people have stood where you are now, one mistake away from losing everything with no safety net to catch you when you fall? Lennox hasn't moved, but something has shifted in his expression. The shock is giving way to calculation. His jaw clenches as he works through the timeline in his head. 8 years. Malik is 8. The math isn't complicated. Why are you here? She asks suddenly, desperate to break the suffocating silence between them. People like you don't come to the basement level unless someone's about to lose their job. His eyes flicker with something that might be hurt. People like me, he repeats softly. The words hang between them, an accusation, a boundary, a reminder of all that's changed. Because he isn't Len anymore. He isn't the boy who kissed her behind the diner dumpsters. He isn't the man who promised they'd escape poverty together. He's Mr. Vale, her boss's boss's boss. The billionaire whose name glows on the building where she sweeps floors. And she cannot, will not, let him see how close she is to breaking. I saw your name, Lennox says finally, on the security report. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting shadows that make him look older than his 30 years. Success has hardened him, sharpened his edges. But his eyes, God, his eyes are still the same. Still that deep brown that once made her believe in forever. So you came down personally to fire the bread thief? Tiana asks, trying to keep her voice steady. No, he says quietly. I came down because I saw your name, Tiana Brooks. The way he says her name makes her chest ache, like he's tested the syllables on his tongue 1,000 times since they parted. It's just bread, she whispers, ignoring the way her name sounds in his mouth. Day-old bread they were throwing out anyway. I know. Then why does it matter? It doesn't, he says. The bread doesn't matter. What's unsaid hangs heavier between them. But you do. You still matter. Tiana shifts her weight, suddenly aware of how she must look to him now. Hair escaping her cap, uniform spotted with flour, dark circles under her eyes from working double shifts. While he stands there in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, smelling of sandalwood and power. The hallway feels smaller, with each passing second, the distance between them both too vast and not nearly enough. When were you going to tell me? Lennox asks, his voice so low she almost doesn't hear it. Her heart stumbles. Tell you what? She asks. But they both know the question is just buying time. About him, Lennox says. About Malik. The name of her son on his lips makes her flinch. Makes something fierce and protective rise in her chest. I wasn't, she says simply. Pain flashes across his face, real pain. Not the manufactured concern of a boss catching an employee stealing. This isn't about bread anymore. It was never about bread. 8 years, he says softly. 8 years, Tiana. She takes a step back, needing distance, needing air that doesn't smell like him. You left, she reminds him, her voice tight. You disappeared. Changed your number. Moved without telling me. What exactly did you expect me to do? Chase after you with a pregnancy test? His eyes widened slightly. So he hadn't known. Not for certain, not until now. Her confirmation hangs between them. Impossible to take back. Lennox runs a hand through his hair. A gesture so achingly familiar that for a second, she sees the boy she loved instead of the billionaire she fears. I didn't know, he whispers. Would it have changed anything? She asks, the question escaping before she can stop it. If you knew I was pregnant, would you have stayed? He opens his mouth, closes it. The silence is answer enough. Her phone buzzes in her pocket, another text from Malik. Probably wondering where she is, if she's bringing food, why she's late again. The reminder of her son snaps her back to reality. It doesn't matter now, she says, straightening her shoulders. What happened between us was a lifetime ago. All that matters is that I keep this job. She pauses, gathering courage. So are you firing me or not, Mr. Vale? The formality of his last name seems to hit him physically, widening the gulf between them. He shakes his head slowly. No, he says, I'm not firing you. Relief floods her system, making her dizzy. But it's short-lived. I want to meet him, Lennox says. The world stops spinning. No, Tiana says immediately, instinctively. He's my son too. No, she repeats, more firmly this time. You don't get to walk back into our lives after 8 years and make demands. You don't get to disrupt everything we've built just because you found out he exists. Lennox steps closer, and the gesture feels more intimate than it should. Please, he says, and the words sound strange, coming from a man who probably hasn't had to beg for anything in years. Just a chance to know him. Tiana feels tears threatening, but she won't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. My son is all I have, she whispers, her voice breaking despite her best efforts. He's the only thing in my life that isn't broken or borrowed or seconds away from being taken. And I won't let you walk in and out of his life the way you did mine. The raw honesty of her words lands between them like a physical thing. Lennox's expression changes, something shifting, breaking, rebuilding behind his eyes. What if, he says slowly, carefully, I promise not to walk away again. And just like that, the most dangerous thing of all blooms in Tiana's chest. Hope. In the security monitoring room, 2 guards lean forward in their chairs, eyes glued to the screens, showing Lennox, Vale, and Tiana in the hallway. Is she gonna get fired? Damon, the younger guard, whispers. He's been at Vale Enterprises for only 3 months. Not long enough to become numb to watching people lose their livelihoods. Not sure, Marcus replies, adjusting his uniform collar. After 15 years in security, he's seen hundreds of terminations. Mr. Vale looks weird. Not like his usual firing face. He has a firing face? Cold, efficient, doesn't waste time. Marcus squints at the monitor. This is different. Like he knows her. They watch as the billionaire steps closer to the bakery worker, not with anger, but something that looks suspiciously like desperation. When was the last time you saw someone bend a rule that needed breaking? Those moments when humanity outweighs policy reveal who we truly are. Should I radio, Carlene? Damon asks, reaching for his comm unit. Handbook says taking product is automatic termination. No exceptions. Marcus hesitates, his finger hovering over the button that would summon more security. Look at her, he murmurs. Single mom, works doubles, never complains. He shakes his head slowly. Sometimes rules don't see the whole story. Back in the hallway, Tiana's words hang between them like smoke. My son is all I have. Her declaration has stripped away Lennox's practiced corporate mask. For the first time in years, the man beneath the billions is visible, vulnerable, uncertain, afraid. I meant what I said, he tells her quietly. I'm not firing you. Tiana's shoulders relax slightly, but suspicion remains etched in the lines around her eyes. Why? She asks. Company policy is clear. 0 tolerance. His mouth tightens. I make the policies. And break them when it's convenient? When it's right? He corrects her. She studies him, trying to reconcile this powerful stranger with the boy she once loved. The boy who swore they'd change the world together. The boy who disappeared the moment opportunity knocked louder than her heart. Let me help you, Lennox says, lowering his voice. Not just with the job. With everything. Tiana stiffens again. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. Then what is it? Guilt? The question hits its mark. Lennox flinches slightly, confirming what she already knew. You can keep the bread, he says, instead of answering. And I'll make sure your supervisor knows you have permission to take unsold items home from now on. Tiana's laugh is short, bitter. And how will that look? The owner making special exceptions for the black girl from the bakery? You think that'll make my life easier? Lennox runs a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again. The one that reminds her of late nights and broken promises. Then, let me help another way, he presses. A raise, better hours, anything. She shakes her head. You can't throw money at this to make yourself feel better. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? Her voice rises slightly, the first crack in her careful composure. You find out you have a son after 8 years, and suddenly you want to play savior? Where were you when I was 19 and terrified? Where were you when I gave birth alone? Where were you for his first words, his first steps, his first birthday? Each question lands like a physical blow. Lennox absorbs them, his face growing paler with each accusation. I didn't know, he whispers. And that's supposed to make it better? Tiana asks. In the security room, Marcus leans back in his chair. Whoa, he mutters. This just got personal. Damon's eyes widen. You think they? Definitely. Marcus nods. And that kid she mentioned? Do the math. They fall silent, suddenly uncomfortable with witnessing something so private. Marcus reaches over and switches the audio feed off, leaving the silent image of two people locked in a painful standoff. Policy says we should report this, Damon says hesitantly. Marcus gives him a long look. Some policies deserve to be broken. In the hallway, Lennox takes a step closer to Tiana. She doesn't back away, but her body tenses, bracing for whatever comes next. I can't change the past, he says. I can't give back those 8 years. But I can be here now, for both of you. Until when? She challenges. Until you get bored? Until some bigger opportunity comes along? Until helping us stops feeling good for your conscience? Her phone buzzes again in her pocket. She pulls it out, glancing at the screen. Her face pales. I have to go, she says, shoving the phone back into her pocket. My neighbor was watching Malik, but she needs to leave for her night shift. She turns to walk away, but Lennox calls after her. Tiana, wait, please. Something in his voice, raw honesty, perhaps makes her stop. What do you want from me? She asks without turning around. Your address, he says simply. A chance to meet him. She shakes her head. I can't just spring you on him. He's a child, not a business transaction you can rush through. Then how? Lennox asks. Tell me how to do this right. The question surprises her enough that she turns back to face him. In all their years together, she can't remember Lennox Vale ever asking for guidance. He was always so certain, so sure of his path forward. I don't know, she admits. I never planned for this. A moment of honesty between them, the first in 8 years. Just, Lennox hesitates. Let me drive you home. It's late. And He stops, seeming to realize how his offer might sound. I want to make sure you both get home safely. Tiana almost refuses automatically. But exhaustion weighs on her shoulders like concrete. And the thought of waiting for the late-night bus with tomorrow's early shift looming makes her reconsider. Fine, she relents. Just a ride home. Relief washes over Lennox's face. He reaches for his phone. I'll call my driver. No, she says quickly. No drivers. No attention. If you're coming to my neighborhood in a car that costs more than the entire block, you might as well put a target on my back. He nods, understanding. I'll drive myself. As they walk toward the executive parking garage, the silence between them feels like its own presence, heavy with unspoken words and lost years. In the elevator, Tiana stands as far from him as the small space allows. Lennox respects the distance, keeping his eyes forward. Thank you, she says suddenly, for not firing me. He looks at her, surprise flickering across his face. You don't need to thank me for doing the bare minimum of human decency. In my world, she says quietly, even the bare minimum feels like mercy sometimes. The words hang between them as the elevator descends, highlighting the vast difference in the lives they've lived since parting. When they reach the garage, Lennox leads her to a modest black sedan. Not the luxury car she expected. Company car, he explains, seeing her expression, less conspicuous. As he reaches to open the passenger door for her, his hand accidentally brushes against hers. They both freeze. It's the first time they've touched in 8 years. The contact lasts less than a second, but it sends electricity coursing through both of them, a current of memory, desire, and pain. So powerful, it leaves them breathless. Tiana pulls her hand away like she's been burned. Lennox steps back, his eyes never leaving her face. And in that tiny moment of accidental touch, 8 years of carefully constructed, walls begin to tremble. An hour earlier, Lennox Vale sat in his office on the top floor, surrounded by glass, city lights, and the cold comfort of success. The city sprawled below him like a circuit board of light and shadow. From 60 floors up, poverty looked abstract, just darker patches in the glittering landscape. From here, hunger was a statistic in reports, not the hollow ache he remembered from childhood. His assistant's knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in, Eliza, he said without looking up from his tablet. She entered with practiced efficiency, heels clicking against marble floors. Sir, we need to discuss waste discrepancies from the ground floor bakery. He barely glanced up. Send it to compliance. It's the 3rd time this month, sir, she pressed. Miss Henderson thinks it warrants attention. Have you ever had a single moment change the course of your entire life? A random Tuesday that suddenly splits your world into before and after? Lennox sighed, annoyed at the interruption. Fine. Show me the report. Eliza placed a tablet on his desk. The highlighted entries show the pattern. Items logged as waste but missing from disposal. Always during closing shift. He scrolled lazily through the spreadsheets, productivity numbers, and security notes. Corporate minutiae that usually held his attention, but tonight felt meaningless. Until one line made his finger freeze, mid-swipe. Employee on shift. Brooks, Tiana. He stared at the name, everything else on the screen blurring into background noise. Tiana Brooks? He whispered, the name foreign, yet achingly familiar on his tongue. Eliza looked confused. Problem, sir? He didn't answer. Couldn't. His mind was racing backward through 8 years of carefully constructed amnesia. Tiana. Small hands that always smelled like vanilla. Laughs that started in her eyes before reaching her mouth. The only person who ever saw him cry. Sir? Eliza prompted again. Pull up her employee file, he said, his voice unnaturally tight. Eliza swiped through several screens, then turned the tablet back toward him, and there she was. A photo of Tiana older, tired, beautiful in a way that hurt his chest. Her employee ID photo showed her in the standard uniform, hair pulled back severely, eyes holding none of the warmth he remembered. But it was unmistakably her. Age, 29. Position, bakery associate. Start date, 11 months ago. Dependents, 1 child. Emergency contact, none. His heart stuttered at the word child. 1 child, he asked, trying to sound casual, professional. Yes, sir, Eliza replied. A boy. She usually brings him before morning shifts, when the sitter cancels. Sweet kid. always drawing pictures. His mouth went dry. How old? 7 or 8, I think. I can check personnel records if it's important. No, he said quickly. Too quickly. That's fine. He closed the file abruptly, staring out at the city again. But now all he could see was his own reflection in the glass, the mask of success. He'd built over a foundation of abandoned promises. Sir, should I issue the termination notice as per company policy? No, he said sharply. Eliza blinked. No, I'll handle this personally. Her eyebrows rose slightly, the closest she ever came to showing surprise. In 3 years as his assistant, she'd never seen him involve himself in ground-level disciplinary issues. May I ask why, sir? Miss Henderson usually. You may not. He cut her off. Then, realizing his tone, he added more gently, I'll take care of it, Eliza. Thank you. Confused but professional as always, she nodded and left him alone with the name that had just detonated his carefully ordered life. Tiana Brooks was working in his building, had been for almost a year. The thought made him dizzy. How many times had they occupied the same space without knowing? How many elevators and lobbies and cafeterias had they shared, separated by floors and fates and choices he couldn't undo? He pulled up the surveillance footage from the bakery's closing shift, and there she was again in motion, this time wiping counters, stacking trays, her movements efficient but weary. She looked thinner than he remembered. Her shoulders curved inward slightly, as if permanently braced against disappointment. She moved to the back room, out of camera range. When she reappeared, her tote bag hung heavier on her shoulder. The bread, the theft, that would get her fired. The reason her name appeared on his screen after 8 years of silence. He watched her clock out, head lowered, moving quickly toward the exit. Without deciding to, Lennox stood and grabbed his jacket. Where are you going, sir? Eliza called as he strode past her desk. Your dinner with the board is in 40 minutes. Cancel it, he said, without breaking stride. But the Singapore investors reschedule. He jabbed the elevator button. I'm going downstairs. To the bakery? She asked, clearly stunned. Yes. Why? He didn't answer. Couldn't explain to Eliza. Couldn't explain to himself why seeing Tiana's name had unraveled 8 years of careful forgetting in an instant. As the elevator doors closed, Lennox leaned against the wall, suddenly unsteady. One child, 7 or 8 years old. Tiana's child. The timeline aligned too perfectly to ignore. His mind raced through calculations he didn't want to face. 8 years since he'd left. 8 years since he'd traded her warmth for wealth. 8 years of building an empire while she what? Raised a child? Alone? The elevator seemed to drop faster than usual, his stomach lurching with each floor. Or maybe it wasn't the elevator at all. Maybe it was the weight of a question he wasn't ready to ask. Did I leave behind more than just Tiana? When the doors opened onto the main floor, he saw her through the glass walls of the bakery, her back to him, wiping down the last display case, her movement slowed by exhaustion. For a moment, he froze, struck by how small she looked, how vulnerable, how utterly removed from the gleaming world he'd built. His watch vibrated with notifications about the canceled meeting, board members expressing displeasure, investors demanding explanations. 8 years ago, these would have sent him running back upstairs, but he silenced them all with a swipe, because suddenly, nothing in his carefully constructed life mattered as much as the answer to one question. Did Tiana Brooks have his child? He walked toward the bakery, heart thundering against his ribs. Each step felt monumental, like crossing a boundary between 2 different lives, the one he'd chosen and the one he'd abandoned. Through the glass, he saw her check her phone, her expression changing to concern. She typed something quickly, then shoved the phone back in her pocket, movements more hurried now. Whoever waited for her at home needed her. The thought made his chest tight. What would it be like to need Tiana Brooks? To depend on her presence, her return, her care? What would it be like to be her child? To be her son? The possibility hit him with physical force, nearly stopping him mid-stride. This wasn't just about reuniting with an old flame. This wasn't just about a minor theft. This wasn't even about making amends for how he'd left. This was about the possibility that somewhere in this city, a child existed who carried half his DNA. A child who might have his eyes, his hands, his stubborn determination. A child who had lived 8 years without knowing his father. A child who might be going hungry tonight. The security guards nodded respectfully as he approached, clearly surprised to see him on this level. "Mr. Vale," one said, holding the door. "Can we help you with something?" "No," Lennox replied, his voice distant even to his own ears. "I need to speak with someone." As he entered the bakery area, Tiana's manager spotted him and rushed over, smoothing her uniform. "Mr. Vale, what an unexpected honor. Is there something—" "The woman at the display case," he interrupted. "I need to speak with her." The manager blinked in surprise, then understanding dawned. "Ah, about the inventory discrepancies? I was just about to handle that situation, sir." "No," he said firmly. "I'll speak with her privately." As the manager called Tiana over, Lennox felt the world narrow to just this moment, this heartbeat before everything changed. Because if his suspicions were correct, if the timing was right, if the child was his, then Lennox Vale was about to discover that the true cost of chasing his dreams hadn't been paid by him at all. It had been paid by a woman who stole bread to feed his son. While Lennox discovered her name on a security report, Tiana's phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She wiped flour from her hands and pulled it out, checking to make sure Carlene wasn't watching. The manager had already written her up twice this month for checking her phone during shift. It was a text from Malik. "Malik, Mom, do we have anything to eat tonight? My stomach hurts." The message felt like a knife twisting between her ribs. She turned away from the security cameras, hiding her face as pain washed over it. 7 simple words that crushed what little strength she had left. Her fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating. What could she say? That the refrigerator held nothing but condiments and a half-empty bottle of juice? That she hadn't eaten in 24 hours so he could have the last bowl of cereal this morning? She typed back quickly. "Tiana, I'm trying, baby. Drink some water. I'll be home soon." She didn't add, "I don't know if I'll have anything for you. I haven't eaten today either. If I lose this job, we might lose the apartment." Have you ever stood in a place of plenty while your child goes hungry? Watched people throw away what would save someone you love? Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. "Malik, okay. I already drank 3 cups. Mrs. Parker says she has to leave for work at 9. Will, do you be home by then?" Tiana checked the clock. 8:17 p.m. She was supposed to finish at 8:30, but Carlene often kept her late, without paying overtime. "Yes. Tell Mrs. Parker I'll be there. Love you. Love you too." She slid the phone back into her pocket, forcing down the lump in her throat. No time for tears. Tears didn't fill empty stomachs. Her own stomach growled loudly. She pressed a hand against it, as if she could silence the hunger by touch alone. She'd skipped breakfast and lunch today, saving the dollar menu burger she'd bought for Malik's after-school snack. "Brooks, stop daydreaming and finish those displays." Carlene's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Yes, ma'am," Tiana replied automatically, turning back to the glass case she'd been wiping down. The bakery smelled like heaven, warm bread, cinnamon, butter, but the scent felt cruel tonight. It reminded her of all the food she couldn't afford, all the meals she'd skipped so Malik could have just a little more. She moved mechanically through her closing tasks, wiping counters that already gleamed, aligning pastry tongs that nobody would use until tomorrow. Each motion felt heavier than the last, her body running on fumes and fear. "Don't forget to log every leftover properly this time," Carlene reminded her, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Last week we had 3 loaves unaccounted for." Tiana nodded. "Yes, ma'am. And make sure all waste goes into the disposal bin, not the donation bin. Corporate policy changed last month. Nothing gets donated anymore. Nothing? Tiana couldn't stop herself from asking. Even the good stuff? Carlene shrugged. Liability concerns. Legal says someone could sue if they got sick. Easier to just trash it all. Tiana stared at the perfect loaves of bread still warm from the afternoon baking. The crusty artisan sourdough that sold for $8.99. The cinnamon raisin that Malik once tasted when a customer left a slice behind and talked about for weeks after. Seems wasteful, she murmured. Carlene's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Nothing, ma'am. I'll log everything correctly. As Carlene walked away to count the register, Tiana began packing the untouched loaves into the waste bags. So much bread. Perfectly good bread. All headed for the dumpster. This could feed 10 families, she whispered to herself, hands trembling slightly as she picked up another warm loaf. The unfairness of it hit her anew with each loaf she packed away. She thought of Malik drinking water to fill his empty stomach, while she threw away food that could nourish him. Thought of the homeless man who slept in the alley behind their apartment building, who'd shared his blanket with her when the heat got cut off last winter. Her phone buzzed again. Malik, Mom, my homework is done, but I'm really hungry now. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself against the counter. This wasn't just hunger. This was failure. This was watching her child suffer because she couldn't provide enough. This was the weight every single parent carries, knowing you are the last line of defense between your child and the world's cruelties. When she opened her eyes, her gaze fell on the freshest loaf, a honey wheat that had come out of the oven just before closing. Nobody had bought it. Nobody would miss it. Nobody except Malik, if she didn't bring it home. She looked at the security cameras, their red lights blinking like mechanical eyes. She looked at the bread, still warm and perfect. She looked at her empty hands, calloused from work that still didn't pay enough to live. The battle waged inside her. Need against honesty, hunger against rules, survival against everything she'd taught her son about right and wrong. What lesson was more important for him to learn? That stealing was wrong? Or that his mother would move heaven and earth to keep him fed? Her hands shook as she slipped the loaf into her tote bag instead of the trash bin. The weight of it settled against her hip, warm through the fabric like a guilty secret. Just one, she whispered. Please, God. Just one. A prayer. A justification. A desperate hope that something as small as bread wouldn't cost her everything. She checked to make sure Carlene was still busy with the register, then logged the loaf as waste, just like all the others. A lie on paper to match the truth in her bag. As she tied off the waste bag, her phone buzzed one final time. Malik, Mrs. Parker says she has to go now. Are you coming home soon? Cold fear washed over her. Mrs. Parker couldn't leave Malik alone, he was only 8. But if she left now without completing her closing duties, Carlene would write her up. 3 write-ups meant termination. She texted quickly. Tiana, tell her to wait 10 more minutes. I'm leaving now. Then she turned to Carlene, forcing her voice to remain steady. Miss Henderson, I need to leave now. My sitter has an emergency. Carlene frowned. You haven't finished the inventory log. I can come in early tomorrow to complete it. That's not procedure, Brooks. Tiana fought to keep desperation from her voice. My son is 8. He can't be alone. Carlene sighed heavily, making it clear this was a tremendous inconvenience. Fine, but I'm noting this in your file. Thank you, Tiana said, already untying her apron. She clocked out, grabbed her coat and tote bag with the hidden bread, and headed for the employee exit. Each step felt like walking through quicksand, heavy with guilt, fear, and the loaf that might cost her everything. But what choice did she have? What would you sacrifice to keep your child from going hungry another night? As she pushed open the door to the back hallway that led to the exit, a voice crackled through the intercom. Tiana Brooks, please remain in the building. Security has been alerted to an inventory discrepancy. Her heart stopped. They knew. They'd seen her take the bread. And now, with her son waiting hungry at home, and her job hanging by a thread, Tiana faced a choice that no mother should have to make. Run and risk everything. Or stay and lose the only thing that mattered. Lennox stepped into his private elevator. But instead of pressing L for lobby, his finger hovered over the button. The polished metal doors closed, trapping him with his reflection, a stranger in an expensive suit, with empty eyes that had seen everything and felt nothing for too long. He barely recognized himself. Success had changed him, hardened him, buried the hungry boy he once was beneath tailored shirts and calculated decisions. But seeing Tiana's name had cracked something open inside him, something he'd sealed away 8 years ago when he walked out of that diner and never looked back. Have you ever faced the moment when all your carefully constructed lies collapse? When the life you've built suddenly feels hollow against the weight of a single truth? Tiana, he whispered to his reflection, testing her name after years of, quote, forced silence. His finger pressed L, and the elevator began its descent from the 60th floor. 60 floors of separation between his world and hers. 60 floors he'd climbed, while she remained below. As the numbers counted down, memories flooded back. Memories he'd locked away, because success required forgetting. Tiana laughing in the rain, her braids dripping water onto his jacket. Tiana studying at that wobbly table in her studio apartment, determination etched on her face. Tiana's fingers touching his cheek when he told her about his mother's death. Tiana whispering dreams against his skin on nights when the heat didn't work. And then, the last memory, the text she'd sent. Can you come over? I need to talk. It's important. And his response, big day tomorrow. We'll talk soon. Soon never came. The next morning, he'd moved into the accelerator dorms, accepted the investment that would change everything, and made a deliberate choice to cut all ties to his old life. No goodbye. No explanation. No forwarding address. Just absence where promises used to be. The elevator passed the 40th floor, and Lennox felt his chest tighten. What had she wanted to tell him that night? What was so important? The timing suddenly hit him with terrible clarity. 8 years ago, the child was 8 years old. His breath caught in his throat. Mathematical certainty crashed through his denial, like a wrecking ball. She'd been trying to tell him about a pregnancy. She'd reached out when she needed him most, and he'd chosen ambition over answering her call. The elevator passed floor 25. His heart hammered against his ribs. If the child was his, if he had a son, what did that make him? Not just the man who abandoned a girlfriend, not just a self-made billionaire, but a father who had never known his child. A father whose son was hungry tonight. The thought made him physically ill. How many birthdays had he missed? How many nightmares, scraped knees, first words, first steps? How many? And times had this child Malik asked about his father? What had Tiana told him? That his father was dead? That his father never wanted him? That his father didn't know he existed? Which answer would hurt less? The elevator passed floor 15. Lennox loosened his tie, suddenly feeling strangled by it. Why hadn't she told him? Why hadn't she tried harder to reach him? But even as the questions formed, he knew the answers. Because he'd disappeared completely. Because he'd changed his number. Because he'd made himself unreachable. Because by the time she knew for certain, he was already gone. He remembered how ruthlessly he'd cut ties with his old life. How thoroughly he'd erased his past to embrace his future. I did this, he whispered to his reflection. This is my fault. The elevator slowed at floor 5, and a junior executive waited to board. One look at Lennox's face made him step back. I'll catch the next one, Mr. Vale, he said quickly. Lennox barely nodded as the doors closed again. Now, questions flooded his mind. Questions he had no right to ask but couldn't stop himself from forming. Had Tiana been alone when she gave birth? Who had held her hand through labor? Who had helped her during those sleepless newborn nights? How had she managed to work and raise a child by herself? The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened to the gleaming marble floor that thousands of people crossed daily, without ever looking up at the name above the door. Vale Enterprises. His name, his legacy, his dream come true. But at what cost? He stepped out, ignoring the nods from security guards and the curious glances from late-working employees. He walked toward the bakery on the far side of the lobby, each step heavier than the last. Through the glass walls, he could see Tiana wiping down counters, her movements slowed by exhaustion. Her hair was pulled back severely, no longer loose around her shoulders the way he remembered. Her uniform hung slightly loose on her frame. Had she lost weight? Was she skipping meals so her son could eat? His son. The thought stopped him mid-stride. What right did he have to claim this child? What right did he have to disrupt their lives now? 8 years too late? None. But he kept walking anyway. Because if Malik was his son, then Lennox owed him everything. Not money, he had plenty of that to give. But time, presence, the knowledge that he wasn't unwanted or forgotten. The bakery manager spotted him through the glass and straightened immediately, nudging another employee, who quickly adjusted her posture. Lennox ignored them both, his eyes fixed on Tiana, who hadn't noticed him yet. She checked her phone, and he saw her face change, worry replacing exhaustion. Whatever message she'd received wasn't good news. As he reached for the door handle, a security guard approached. "Sir, we just flagged an inventory discrepancy in the bakery. Would you like us to handle it?" Lennox froze. What kind of discrepancy? One of the employees appears to have taken product. It's not the first time. Miss Henderson requested termination proceedings. Tiana. They were talking about Tiana. Which employee? He asked, though he already knew. Brooks, sir. Tiana Brooks. Security cameras show her placing an item in her personal bag approximately 3 minutes ago. The bread. She'd taken bread. Bread to feed her son. Possibly his son. "I'll handle it," Lennox said, his voice sharper than intended. The guard looked surprised. "Sir, company policy states, I said I'll handle it." His tone left no room for argument. As he pushed open the door, the manager rushed toward him, plastering on a smile. "Mr. Vale, what an unexpected honor. Is there something—" "The woman at the counter," he interrupted. "I need to speak with her, privately." "Miss Brooks?" The manager's smile faltered. "We've just discovered an inventory issue that I'm aware—" He cut her off. "And I'll address it personally." Confusion flickered across the manager's face, but she knew better than to question him further. "Of course, sir. I'll have security escort her to—" "No, I'll speak with her here, now." As the manager called Tiana over, Lennox felt a strange sensation spreading through his chest. Not anger or disappointment at her theft, not even the shock of seeing her again after so long, but something deeper and more frightening. The absolute certainty that in the next few minutes he would learn whether he was a father, and that no matter what empire he'd built, no matter what billions he'd earned, nothing would ever be the same again. "Tiana Brooks, please, remain in the building. Security has been alerted to an inventory discrepancy." The announcement echoes through the empty hallway, freezing Tiana in place. The bread in her bag suddenly feels like it weighs 100 pounds, pulling her down, exposing her crime with each step. She stops breathing for a moment. Then instinct takes over. Run or stay? Fight or surrender? The Bezenrow. Primal questions of survival pulse through her veins. Her fingers grip her phone, quickly typing another message to Malik, while her mind races through consequences. "Are you okay? Please answer right away." No response. Her heart hammers against her ribs. Did Mrs. Parker leave already? Is Malik alone? Is he scared? Is he safe? What would you sacrifice to protect someone you love? How many rules would you break? How many lines would you cross? Tiana's mind flashes through options, each worse than the last. If she runs, she'll be fired for sure. If she stays, she'll probably be fired anyway. If she's fired, the rent won't get paid. If the rent isn't paid, they'll be evicted. If they're evicted, she pushes the thought away, one crisis at a time. Her phone remains silent. No answer from Malik. Behind her, footsteps echo in the corridor. Security, coming to escort her back. She could drop the bread, pretend she never took it, but the cameras would show everything. The evidence is bad. Already recorded, her crime preserved in digital memory. She takes a deep breath and turns around. Two security guards approach, their faces carefully neutral, not angry, not sympathetic, just doing their jobs. "Miss Brooks," the older one says, "please come with us." "My son," she starts, her voice cracking. "He's alone. I need to." "This won't take long," the younger guard interrupts. "Miss Henderson wants to see you." Of course, Carlene would want to handle this personally, would want to see Tiana's face when she fired her, would want to make an example of the bread thief. Her phone remains silent in her hand. Still no answer from Malik. The fear transforms into something else. Something harder, something dangerous. Anger, not at being caught, not at the guards doing their jobs, but at a world where bread gets thrown away while children go hungry. At a system that pays her so little she can't feed her son. At policies that value profit over people. At Lennox Vale, who walked away from her years ago and built an empire that would now punish her for feeding their child. "Fine," she says, straightening her spine. "Let's get this over with." They escort her back to the bakery. Carlene stands by the register, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "Empty your bag," she demands before Tiana can speak. Tiana hesitates, glancing at her silent phone again. "Now, Brooks." With steady hands that belie her inner turmoil, Tiana opens her tote and removes the loaf of bread. Still warm, still perfect, still a crime. Carlene's eyes narrow. "I knew it. This is the third time inventory hasn't matched the log. I should have been watching you more closely. It was going to be thrown away," Tiana says quietly. "That's not your decision to make. Company policy is clear. My son is hungry." Carlene's expression doesn't change. That's not Vale Enterprises' problem. The words land like a slap. Tiana swallows hard, fighting back the tears, threatening to spill. "No," she agrees. "I guess hungry children aren't profitable enough to matter." Something flickers in Carlene's eyes. A momentary doubt, quickly suppressed. "You know I have to report this," she says, her voice slightly less harsh. "I know. Termination is automatic for theft. It's not theft if it was being thrown away," Tiana argues, though she knows it's futile. It's company property until it's in the dumpster. Tiana looks at the bread sitting between them on the counter. $5 worth of flour and yeast that will cost her everything. "Can I at least go home first? My son is waiting. He's only 8, he can't be alone." Carlene hesitates, a flicker of humanity breaking through her managerial facade. Before she can answer, Tiana's phone buzzes. She grabs it frantically. "Mom, Mrs. Parker left already. The door scared me. Her blood runs cold." Mrs. Parker had left him alone. He was scared. 8 years old and alone in their apartment at night. "I have to go," she says, no longer asking permission. "Fire me tomorrow if you have to, but I'm leaving now." She reaches for the bread. If she's being fired anyway, she might as well take it. But Carlene moves faster, pulling it away. "That stays here," she says firmly. Tiana's eyes burn with unshed tears. He hasn't eaten all day. Something shifts in Carlene's expression, a momentary softening. "That's not," she begins, but is interrupted by a commotion at the bakery entrance. They both turn to see what's happening. Carlene's face transforms instantly, shock replacing authority. "Mr. Vale," she stammers, smoothing her uniform. "What an unexpected honor." Tiana's heart stops. Lennox Vale, here, now, when she's caught stealing, when she's about to lose everything, when their paths were never supposed to cross again. "I need to speak with Miss Brooks," his deep voice says. Privately. Carleen blinks rapidly. Of course, sir. But we've just discovered an inventory issue that… I'm aware. He cuts her off. And I'll handle it personally. Confusion flickers across Carleen's face, but years of corporate conditioning prevent her from questioning him. Yes, sir. Should I have security escort her to your office? No. I'll speak with her here. Tiana stands frozen, unable to process what's happening. Why would the owner of the company personally handle a $5 bread theft? Unless he recognized her name. Unless he remembered her. Unless he somehow knew about Malik. Impossible. She'd made sure of it. She'd disappeared from his life as completely as he had from hers. Carleen turns to her, voice suddenly saccharine. Miss Brooks, Mr. Vale would like to speak with you. Tiana's phone buzzes again. Malik, Mom, I'm scared. Someone's at the door again. Terror grips her throat. Someone at their door? At this hour? Who? Why? She needs to leave. Now. But Lennox Vale himself stands between her and the exit. The billionaire's eyes find hers across the bakery floor. And recognition flashes between them, a current of shared history that neither expected to confront tonight. Tiana, he says softly, her name an admission of guilt on his lips. And in that moment, standing in the bakery of the empire he built after leaving her behind, Tiana makes a decision that will change everything. She steps forward, facing the father of her child, for the first time in 8 years, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Mr. Vale, she says, emphasizing his title. I need to leave immediately. My son is in danger. My son is in danger. The words hang in the air between them, transforming the atmosphere in an instant. Lennox's carefully composed facade cracks. His eyes widen, any pretense of corporate formality evaporating. What's happening? He asks, voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Tiana holds up her phone, screen visible only to him. Someone's at our apartment door. He's alone. He's 8 years old. Understanding flashes across Lennox's face. Not just concern, but the math. 8 years. The unspoken implication lands between them like a live wire. Let's go, he says without hesitation. My car is outside. Carleen stares, mouth agape at this unexpected development. Sir? What about the missing inventory? Lennox barely glances at the bread on the counter. Is that it? 1 loaf? Yes, sir. But company policy. Consider it handled. He cuts her off. Miss Brooks is leaving with me now. Have you ever judged someone's choices before walking in their shoes? Before knowing what drove them to that desperate edge, where pride gives way to necessity? Tiana hesitates, torn between urgency and suspicion. Accepting his help means letting him into her carefully constructed world, the life she's built without him. But Malik needs her now. Fine, she says, grabbing her bag. But this doesn't change anything. They walk swiftly through the gleaming lobby, the contrast between them stark under the bright lights. His tailored suit and her flower-dusted uniform. His confident stride and her exhausted shuffle. His world of abundance and her world of lack. Yet beneath these differences pulses the undeniable current of shared history, memories neither has fully escaped. In the parking garage, he leads her to a modest black sedan, rather than the luxury car she expected. Company car? He explains, catching her surprised glance. Less attention. They slide in, the engine purring to life. Tiana checks her phone again. Malik. Mom. They keep knocking. I'm hiding. Her hands shake as she types. I'm coming, baby. 5 minutes. Stay hidden. Don't open the door. Lennox glances at her from the driver's seat. Where are we going? She hesitates before giving him the address. Sharing this information feels like surrendering a piece of the fortress she's built around her life. Around their son. He enters it into the GPS without comment, but his knuckles whiten on the steering wheel. That's the east side. Yes. Her voice is tight. Problem? He shakes his head quickly. No, of course not. But they both know what he's thinking. It's not a safe neighborhood. It's not where he would choose for his son to live. As they navigate evening traffic, tension fills the car like smoke. "Why did you take it?" Lennox finally asks, breaking the silence. Tiana doesn't pretend to misunderstand. "The bread?" "Yes." She stares out the window, city lights blurring as they speed past. "Because it was being thrown away. Because my refrigerator is empty. Because my son hasn't eaten since this morning." Each reason lands like an accusation. Lennox's jaw tightens. "You could have asked for help." A bitter laugh escapes her. "Asked who? My manager who reminds me I'm replaceable every week? Security guards who follow handbook rules like they're gospel? Or the owner I never see? The billionaire who doesn't know my name?" The irony isn't lost on either of them. The billionaire knows her name, knows her body, once knew her dreams. "You. No, I would have helped if..." "If what?" She cuts him off. "If you knew I existed? If you hadn't disappeared without a trace? If you'd bothered to return a single one of my calls before changing your number?" He flinches at the raw pain in her voice. "I didn't know," he says quietly. "Didn't know what?" "That you needed help. That you were pregnant. That I had a essay." He stops abruptly, the word hanging unspoken between them. "Son." Tiana turns to face him fully, eyes blazing. "You don't get to claim him now. You weren't there for morning sickness, or birth, or sleepless nights, or first steps, or first words, or first days of school. You don't get to walk in after 8 years and play father." Lennox absorbs each blow without defense, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I would have stayed," he whispers. "If I'd known." "Would you?" she challenges. "Really? With your big dreams and investors waiting? When you couldn't even answer my call that night?" He doesn't respond. The answer is written in his silence. Her phone buzzes again. "Malik. Mom. They left. But I'm still scared." Relief floods her system. "They're gone," she tells Lennox. "But we still need to hurry." He accelerates slightly, turning onto her street. The change in neighborhood is immediate and stark. Broken streetlights, crumbling sidewalks, security bars on windows, a visual representation of how far apart their worlds have grown. "This is it," she says as they approach a worn apartment building. Lennox parks, taking in the graffiti-marked walls and broken entry light. His expression reveals nothing, but Tiana can read the shock in his eyes. "Not what you expected?" she asks, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "I didn't have expectations," he lies politely. As they exit the car, Tiana's phone buzzes one final time. "Malik. Mom. I hear someone else now." She rushes toward the building entrance, Lennox close behind. The door's security lock has been broken for months, allowing them to push straight through to the dim lobby. "Third floor," she says, heading for the stairs when she sees the out-of-order sign still taped to the elevator. They climb in silence, the stairwell smelling of mildew and old cooking oil. On the second-floor landing, Lennox finally speaks. "What's his name?" Tiana pauses mid-step, the question catching her off guard. In all their heated exchanges, they've carefully avoided this, the most basic detail about the child who connects them. "Why does it matter?" she asks. But the fight has drained from her voice. "Because he's..." Lennox hesitates, then finishes quietly. "Because I want to know. Please." Something in his tone, the raw honesty, perhaps breaks through her defenses. "Malik," she says softly. "His name is Malik." The name settles between them, no longer just a concept but a person, a reality. Lennox stops breathing for a moment. "Malik," he repeats, testing the weight of it on his tongue. "Yes. And he's 8? 8 years and 2 months. She confirms, the timeline unmistakable. Lennox leans against the wall, the full impact of this truth hitting him physically. 8 years and 2 months. Conceived just before he left. The child he never knew existed. His son. "I need to see him," he whispers, the words more plea than demand. Tiana's protective instincts flare. You can't just walk into his life and... A child's voice interrupts from above. "Mom? Is that you?" They both look up to see a small figure peering down from the third-floor landing. A boy with Lennox's eyes and Tiana's smile, wearing pajamas with superheroes faded from too many washes. And in that moment, standing in a dingy stairwell, with the scent of strangers' lives around them, Lennox Vale, billionaire, entrepreneur, empire builder, comes face to face with the greatest achievement he had no part in creating. "Mom, is that you?" Lennox feels the world tilt beneath his feet. The boy's voice, high and clear, innocent and afraid, cuts through the closet stairwell's musty air, slicing straight to something primal in Lennox's chest, something he didn't know existed until this very moment. For the first time in his adult life, Lennox Vale, the man who commands boardrooms and bends markets to his will, feels utterly powerless, because there he is, a small silhouette peering down from the landing above, too far to see clearly, but unmistakably real. No longer a concept or a suspicion or a mathematical possibility. A child. His child. Have you ever had a single moment transform your entire identity? When everything you believed about yourself shatters against a truth you can no longer deny? "Yes, baby, it's me," Tiana calls up, her voice instantly softening. "Stay there. I'm coming." She shoots Lennox a warning look. "Wait here," she whispers urgently. "He doesn't know about you. Don't just appear in his life without warning." But Lennox can't respond, can barely breathe. The name echoes in his mind, acquiring weight and substance with each repetition. Malik, Malik, Malik. A name he didn't choose. A life he didn't help create. A person who exists because of him, but not because of any conscious choice he made. His son. As Tiana hurries up the remaining stairs, Lennox sinks onto a step, legs suddenly unable to support him. He presses a hand against his chest, feeling his heart hammer against his palm. 8 years. 8 years of Malik's life. 8 birthdays. 8 Christmases. 8 years of growing and changing and becoming. While Lennox chased success in glass towers, unaware his greatest achievement lived in a broken-down apartment building across town. Above, he hears Tiana's voice. "Gentle now. Were you scared, baby?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker left early. Someone was knocking real hard," the boy's voice replies. "I hid in the closet like you showed me. That's my smart boy. Who were you talking to?" A pause. "Just someone from work. Let's get inside." Lennox hears their footsteps moving away from the Branchen stairwell, a door opening and closing. He remains frozen, overwhelmed by what he's just witnessed. The contrast between Tiana's love for their son and his complete absence from the child's life feels like physical pain. What has he done? Minutes pass, he doesn't know how many, before Tiana reappears at the top of the stairs. Her face is composed again, armor back in place. "He's settled," she says quietly. "You need to go now." Lennox stands, finding his voice at last. "Tiana, we need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. He's my son." The words hang between them the first time either has said it aloud. An admission. A claim. A truth neither can take back. Tiana's eyes flash. Biologically, maybe. But in every way that matters? No. You're a stranger. That's not fair. "Fair?" she repeats, voice rising slightly before she catches herself, glancing back toward her apartment door. She descends several steps, bringing herself closer, her voice dropping to an intense whisper. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you disappeared without a word? When you changed your number? When I showed up at your apartment and found strangers living there?" Each question lands like a physical blow. Lennox doesn't defend himself. Can't. "I didn't know you were pregnant," he says quietly. "Would it have mattered?" she challenges. "Would you have stayed if you knew?" He wants to say yes immediately. Wants to believe he would have made the right choice. But honesty compels him to hesitate. 8 years ago, he'd been hungry for success, desperate to escape poverty, terrified of ending up like his father, broke, bitter, buried in a pauper's grave before 50. "I don't know," he admits finally. "I want to say yes, but I don't know." Something shifts in her expression, not softening exactly, but a fractional easing of hostility at his honesty. "At least you're not lying," she says. "I never lied to you, Tiana." "No. You just left without saying goodbye. That's somehow worse." In the harsh fluorescent light of the stairwell, he sees the toll the years have taken on her. Fine lines around her eyes, a permanent crease between her brows, the weight of single motherhood etched into her very posture. "I'm sorry," he says simply, "for all of it." She laughs, a small, broken sound without humor. "Sorry doesn't feed a child, Lennox. Sorry doesn't pay rent, or buy clothes, or cover doctor's bills. Let me help now," he says, stepping closer. "Please. Whatever you need, whatever he needs. We don't need your money. Then what do you need?" "Nothing. From you, nothing." But even as she says it, they both know it's not true. The empty refrigerator, the dangerous neighborhood, the stolen bread, the broken elevator. Every detail around them tells a different story. "Malik deserves better than this," he says softly. Her eyes flash. Don't you dare suggest I haven't given him everything I possibly could. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "That he deserves to have two parents. That he deserves to know where he comes from. That he deserves," Lennox swallows hard, "that he deserves to know his father." The words hang in the stairwell, impossible to take back. Tiana stares at him, something complicated and painful crossing her face. "His father left before he was born. I didn't know he existed. And now you do. So what? You think you can just walk into his life and play daddy? Buy his love with toys and trips that I could never afford? Make me the bad guy who kept him from you?" "No," Lennox says. "I would never do that." "Then what do you want?" "A chance," he says simply. "A chance to know him. A chance to be part of his life. A chance to make this right." Tiana crosses her arms, creating a physical barrier between them. "And if I say no?" The question hangs between them, heavy with implication. Lennox could force the issue, could use his wealth and influence to demand paternity tests and legal rights, could tear apart the stable, if struggling life she's built for their son. They both know he has that power. "Then I'll accept it," he says finally. "But I'm asking you not to say no. Not yet. Not without thinking about what's best for Malik." A door creaks open above them. They both look up to see the boy peering down again. "Mom?" His voice floats down. "I'm hungry." The simple statement lands like an accusation between them. The reason she stole the bread. The evidence of her struggle. The proof of Lennox's absence. "I'll be right there, baby." Tiana calls up, her voice softening again. "Go pick a book for bedtime." The door closes, and she turns back to Lennox, decision hardening in her eyes. "You need to go," she says firmly. "Now. Tiana, please. My son is hungry, and I have nothing to feed him. Because your company took back the bread I took from the trash." She cuts him off, voice tight with controlled fury. "So forgive me if your feelings aren't my priority right now." The stark reality of her words silences him. "Tomorrow," he says finally. "Can we talk tomorrow, properly? About all of this?" She hesitates, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she nods once, sharply. "One conversation. That's it. Thank you," he says, relief washing through him. She turns to go, then stops, looking back at him with eyes that have seen too much hardship. "Just so we're clear," she says quietly, "this isn't about you and me. This isn't about the past. This is about Malik. Only Malik." "I understand." "Do you?" she asks. "Because Malik isn't a business deal you can negotiate. He's not an acquisition or a merger. He's a child who's never had a father. And if you walk into his life, just to walk back out again when it gets complicated or inconvenient, She doesn't finish the threat. Doesn't need to. The implication is clear in her eyes, in the protective set of her shoulders, in every fiber of her being. I won't, Lennox promises, meaning it with an intensity that surprises even him. I'm not leaving again. Not him. Not you. Something flickers across her face. Disbelief. Hope. Fear. He can't tell which. Don't make promises you can't keep, Lennox, she whispers. We've both grown too old for fairy tales. And with that, she turns and climbs the stairs, leaving him standing alone in the stairwell of a building he would have never entered if not for the child he never knew he had. A child named Malik who is waiting upstairs, hungry, fatherless. 8 years earlier, rain fell on the diner's neon sign, scattering red and blue light across wet pavement like shattered glass. Inside, Tiana wiped tables after the dinner rush, her reflection ghosting across the windows. At 21, her face still held the softness of youth, her eyes not yet hardened by years of struggle. This wasn't her dream job waiting tables at Marty's diner, but it paid for community college classes and kept a roof over her head. And it had brought her Len. He burst through the door then, rain dripping from his jacket, eyes bright with the feverish energy that always surrounded him. Tia, he called, waving a folder like it contained the secret to life itself. You won't believe what happened. Before Lennox Vale became a billionaire, with more power than he knew what to do with, he was a line cook, with burnt hands and big dreams. And before Tiana Brooks became a single mother balancing 2 jobs, she was a girl in love with a boy who believed the world was waiting for him. Have you ever stood at a crossroads, unaware that a single decision would forever alter the course of your life? That the choice between yes and no, stay or go, speak or remain silent, would echo through all your tomorrows? The investors actually read my proposal, Lennox continued, sliding into a booth without removing his wet jacket. They want to meet tomorrow morning. All of them. The whole board. Tiana smiled, his excitement infectious, despite the faint nausea that had plagued her all day. That's amazing, Len. I knew they'd see it. His algorithm designed to track food inventory and reduce waste had consumed him for months. Late nights coding at her tiny kitchen table, practice pitches while she studied, endless revisions until his eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. If they back it, everything changes, he said, running hands through damp hair. Everything we talked about, it could actually happen. The future they'd mapped out together, on napkins and dreams. A small business that would grow slowly. A modest home. Maybe children someday when they were ready. A life built together brick by careful brick. I'm so proud of you, she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. He caught her hand, pressing his lips to her knuckles. This is for us, Tia. For our future. Our future. The words echoed strangely against the secret she'd been carrying for 3 days now, pressing against her ribs like a trapped bird. 2 pink lines on a drugstore test. A missed period. Morning sickness that wasn't just mornings. Their future had arrived earlier than planned. Len, she started, her voice catching. I need to. Oh, he interrupted, pulling a business card from his pocket. I almost forgot. The lead investor gave me his private number. Said to call tonight, to prep for tomorrow. The moment slipped away. She swallowed her news, watching excitement transform him. Later, she told herself, after his meeting, after his big moment, she didn't know that later would never come. That night, after her shift, Tiana sat in her studio apartment, staring at the pregnancy test on her bathroom counter. Rain tapped against her window, and nausea rolled through her again. She needed Len. Needed his arms around her, his voice telling her they'd figure it out together. She texted him, "Can you come over? I need to talk. It's important." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, big day, tomorrow. We'll talk soon. Her heart sank. She typed back, "Please, Len, I really need you tonight." Minutes passed. Her phone, remained silent. She called, but it went straight to voicemail. She left a message, voice breaking slightly. "Len, it's me. I have something important to tell you. Please call me back. Please." He didn't. She fell asleep waiting, phone clutched in her hand, tear tracks drying on her cheeks. The next morning, she woke to texts from coworkers. Not him. "Oh my God, did you hear about Len? He got that big investment. They're flying him to SF today." She called him again, straight to voicemail. Worry crept in, replacing disappointment. This wasn't like him. Even with the excitement, he wouldn't just disappear. Would he? After her shift, she took the bus to his apartment. Climbing the 3 flights of stairs, she rehearsed how to tell him, how to explain that their someday was now today. She knocked. No answer. Knocked again. The door across the hall opened. An empriage, elderly woman peered out. "Looking for the young man? He moved out this morning." Tiana's world tilted. "What?" "Left before sunrise. Moving truck and everything. Said something about California and a big opportunity." "Did he leave a note? A forwarding address?" The woman shook her head. "Sorry, honey. He was in quite a hurry." Tiana leaned against the wall, legs suddenly unable to support her. He'd left. Without a word, without a goodbye, without knowing about the life growing inside her. She tried calling again from the bus stop. A computerized voice informed her the number was no longer in service. At home, she messaged him on every platform they'd ever used. No response. Days turned into weeks. She called mutual friends, checked social media, even contacted the diner owner who'd hired him. Nothing. Until a month later, when a tech blog featured a new startup with promising waste reduction software. There he was, smiling from the screen, quoted about leaving everything behind to focus completely on building something revolutionary. He hadn't been kidnapped, hadn't been in an accident, hadn't lost his phone. He'd simply chosen a different future than the one they'd planned. A future that didn't include her, or the child neither of them had planned. 3 months pregnant, sitting on her bathroom floor after another bout of morning sickness, Tiana made a decision that would shape the next 8 years. She deleted his number. She deleted their photos. She deleted the future they'd planned together. And she built a new one that had room for her child but not for false hopes of a father's return. "It's just us now," she whispered to her still flat stomach, wiping tears with the back of her hand. "But we'll be okay. I promise." In that moment, on a cracked linoleum floor in a studio apartment with thin walls, Tiana became a mother. Not just to the life growing inside her, but to herself, to the wounded girl whose heart had been abandoned along with her body. She would never wait for rescue again. She would never count on promises again. She would never need anyone but herself again. And she would raise her child to be stronger than she had been. Strong enough to survive in a world where people leave. Strong enough to thrive without a father. The universe had given her a single clear message. If you want something done, you do it yourself. If you want protection, you become the shield. If you want love that doesn't leave, you create it. 6 months later, she gave birth to Malik. Alone. She chose his name carefully, King, in Arabic, because no matter what his father had decided, this child would never feel like anything less than royalty in her eyes. And when the nurse asked for the father's name for the birth certificate, Tiana answered without hesitation, "There isn't one." A single choice, made in a moment of ambition and fear, had forever altered 3 lives. One decision that could never be undone. While Tiana cradled newborn Malik, Lennox Vale stood on a San Francisco rooftop, champagne flute in hand, watching the city lights glitter like the future he'd chosen. To Vale Systems, a venture capitalist toasted, raising his glass. "The fastest growing startup in our portfolio's history." Everyone cheered. Lennox smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Nothing had in months. Success tasted different than he'd imagined. Sweeter in some ways, bitter in others, with an aftertaste of something he couldn't name but recognized as loss. How many people build empires while their hearts crumble silently behind designer suits and practiced smiles? 1 year after leaving the diner, Lennox's algorithm had transformed from code into a company valued at $12 million. While Tiana mastered diaper changes on 3 hours of sleep, he mastered boardrooms and investment decks. While she sang lullabies to soothe colicky cries, he delivered pitches that soothed investor fears. Their paths couldn't have diverged more completely. But something strange happened as Lennox climbed higher. The view, impressive as it was, felt hollow without someone to share it with. Without her to share it with. In his penthouse apartment, surrounded by sleek furniture chosen by a decorator, he sometimes woke, disoriented, reaching for a warm body that wasn't there. In restaurants with potential partners, he'd catch himself looking for her smile in the faces of waitresses. In quiet moments between meetings, her voice would echo in his memory, pulling him back to a tiny apartment and simpler dreams. "You've got to stop working so hard," his COO told him one night after everyone else had gone home. "When's the last time you had fun? Dated someone? Had a life outside this building?" Lennox shrugged. "The company needs me. The company needs you alive," his friend corrected. "Not burned out at 30. But work was safer than dating. Safer than connecting. Safer than remembering what he'd left behind." When women, he approached him at networking events, drawn by his success, his intensity, his rapidly growing net worth. He was unfailingly polite, but distant. He went on dates that led nowhere, had brief relationships that faded before they truly began. No one felt like her. No one challenged him like her. No one saw through his ambition to the scared boy beneath like she had. By the 3rd year, Veil Systems had expanded globally. While Tiana worked double shifts to afford Malik's asthma medication, Lennox opened offices in Singapore, London, and Dubai. While she taught their son to walk, Lennox taught corporations how to maximize efficiency and minimize waste. Success fed on itself, growing exponentially. 30 million became 100 million. 100 million became $500 million. With each zero added to his net worth, the hole in his chest expanded proportionately. He told himself it was the natural cost of achievement. That loneliness was the tax the exceptional paid for greatness. He told himself she was better off without him. This became his mantra when doubts crept in at 3 a.m., when he found himself searching her name online, then closing the browser before hitting enter, when he drove through his old neighborhood during rare trips home, circling her block without stopping. She's better off without me. She's moved on. She's happier now. She's found someone stable. She's built a better life than I could have given her then. He repeated these lies until they almost sounded true, until he almost believed them. But sometimes, in rare moments of honesty, usually after too much scotch in empty hotel rooms, he admitted a different truth to himself. He hadn't left for her sake. He'd left for his. Because he was terrified of failing her. Terrified of becoming his father, a man with big dreams and empty pockets, who left his family burdened with nothing but broken promises. The irony wasn't lost on him. In trying not to become his father, he'd repeated the man's worst mistake. 5 years after leaving the diner, Lennox Vale became a billionaire. The day the company went public, Wall Street celebrated a new wunderkind. His algorithm had expanded beyond food waste to revolutionize supply chains across industries. Vale Enterprises now employed thousands, with Lennox as its visionary CEO. At the celebration, surrounded by executives and investors, a reporter asked him, "What's your secret? How did you achieve so much so young?" Lennox smiled his practiced smile. "Focus. I eliminated all distractions." That night, alone in his penthouse, he stared at the city sprawled below him. All this power, all this wealth, all this emptiness. He'd traded a future with Tiana for this view, this silence, this success. Had it been worth it? In his darkest moments, he wasn't sure. By year 7, Vale Enterprises had become a conglomerate. Lennox expanded beyond software into physical spaces, sustainable restaurants, bakeries, grocery stores, places where his algorithm could be implemented directly. At the grand opening of the flagship Vale Artisan Bakery, he cut the ribbon with golden scissors, cameras flashing. Inside, the air smelled of fresh bread and possibility. "Our mission is eliminating waste while creating beauty," he told the press. "Every loaf matters. Nothing valuable should ever be thrown away." The irony of his words would haunt him later. Meanwhile, across town, Tiana was interviewing for a bakery position to supplement her morning grocery store job. Malik was 7 now, in school, needing more than she could provide on one income. Their orbits were slowly, inexorably drawing closer again. Neither knew it yet. In his 8th year of empire building, Lennox sat alone in his office, reviewing acquisition targets, companies to buy, businesses to absorb into his growing kingdom. His assistant knocked. "The quarterly reports from the bakery division, sir." He nodded, barely glancing up as she placed the tablet on his desk. Later, scrolling through productivity metrics and profit margins, his finger froze mid-swipe. There, buried in a routine waste report from a bakery he'd never visited personally. Employee on shift. Brooks, Tiana. The world stopped spinning. 8 years of carefully constructed amnesia shattered in an instant. Tiana. Here. In his company. Under his name. Working in one of his bakeries. The very breath left his lungs. His hands shook as he pulled up her employee file. And there she was. Older. Tired. Beautiful. In a way that hurt him physically. Age. 29. Position. Bakery associate dependence. 1 child. He stared at the photo, time collapsing around him. Everything he'd built, the empire, the walls around his heart, the justifications for leaving, suddenly felt paper-thin and meaningless. 1 child. The words pulsed on the screen, demanding attention he was afraid to give them. 1 child. 7 or 8 years old, his assistant had said. When he asked, the timeline aligned too perfectly to ignore. In that moment, sitting in his glass tower, surrounded by the trappings of success, Lennox Vale faced a possibility that would remake his entire world. He hadn't just abandoned the woman he loved. He might have abandoned his child as well. Tiana's pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit like a hurricane, leaving her clutching toilet bowls during work breaks. Her feet swelled in her waitress shoes. Her back ached as she carried trays of food while her body strained to create life. But the physical challenges were nothing compared to the financial terror. 5 months pregnant, standing in her tiny kitchen, she opened her refrigerator and stared at the barren shelves. Half a carton of milk, a wilted head of lettuce, a jar of mayonnaise, with barely enough to cover 1 sandwich. This was the moment the reality of single motherhood truly hit her. This was the first night she went to bed hungry, so her unborn child could have what little nutrition she could provide. It wouldn't be the last. How? Many mothers stand in silent kitchens each night, making calculations no one should have to make, dividing too little among too many, their own hunger an afterthought. When the diner closed permanently in her 6th month, Tiana applied for every job she could find. No one wanted to hire a visibly pregnant woman. Too much risk. Too much liability. Too much potential absence. "We'll keep your application on file," they said, eyes already moving past her swollen belly to the next candidate. Her savings dwindled. Rent came due. The power company sent warnings. At night, she talked to her unborn child, making promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We'll be okay," she whispered to her rounded stomach. "I'll figure it out." A former diner regular offered her cash cleaning houses off the books. She accepted, despite doctors' orders to avoid heavy lifting and chemical cleaners. When one client commented on her pregnancy, she lied and said her husband worked nights. The lie tasted bitter, but pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. When Malik was born after 23 hours of labor, with only a hospital nurse holding her hand, Tiana cried not just from pain and joy, but from a terrible understanding. This perfect, helpless being was entirely dependent on her. Only her. The hospital bills arrived a week later. Numbers so large they didn't seem real. She applied for assistance, filled out forms, waited in government offices with a newborn against her chest. Some aid came through. Never enough. Never reliable. By the time Malik was 3 months old, Tiana had worked out a system. Morning shifts at a grocery store where a kind manager let her adjust her schedule around childcare. Evening cleaning jobs when she could find a neighbor willing to watch Malik for less than she earned. 4 hours of sleep became a luxury. Showers, an indulgence. Meals, an afterthought. But Malik never went hungry. Even when she had to water down his formula to make it stretch. Even when she pawned her mother's wedding ring to buy diapers. Even when she wrapped him in her own clothes because she couldn't afford a winter coat, her son would have what she didn't. When Malik turned 1, Tiana baked cupcakes from scratch, using ingredients purchased one at a time over weeks. She hung dollar store decorations and sang "Happy Birthday" with a voice hoarse from exhaustion. He smashed his cupcake, giggling, oblivious to the fact that his mother had eaten nothing but his leftover cereal for 2 days to afford this small celebration. She took pictures on a second-hand phone, capturing his frosting-covered smile. No one would have guessed from those photos that afterward, she sat on the bathroom floor and cried until her throat hurt, overwhelmed by how much she loved him and how terrified she was of failing him. As Malik grew, so did her determination. When the grocery store cut hours, she added a bakery job. When the bakery couldn't offer mornings, she found night shifts cleaning offices. When office cleaning didn't pay enough, she delivered newspapers at dawn. Her life became an endless rotation of uniforms, time clocks, and the precious few hours with her son between jobs. The math never quite worked. No matter how many hours she worked, no matter how carefully she budgeted, something always fell short. Rent or electricity, food or medicine, winter boots or school supplies. When Malik started preschool, he came home asking why other kids had daddies, why their houses were bigger, why they had toys he didn't. Every family is different, she told him, heart breaking behind her smile. Some have 2 parents, some have 1. Some have big houses, some have cozy apartments. But all that matters is how much love there is. Do we have lots of love? He asked, eyes wide and trusting. More than anyone, she promised. And that, at least, wasn't a lie. She became an expert at creative solutions. Birthday gifts appeared from relatives who didn't exist. Christmas presents came from Santa, who somehow shopped exclusively at thrift stores. When other children got new shoes, Malik's were special vintage editions, cleaned and polished to look almost new. She guarded his childhood fiercely, building walls between him and the harsh realities she faced. He never saw her counting pennies at the register, praying she had enough. He never knew she skipped meals when food ran low. He never heard her crying in the shower, the only place she allowed herself to break. When Malik turned 5 and needed school supplies, Tiana took a 3rd job. When he turned 6 and outgrew his clothes, she learned to sew. When he turned 7 and developed asthma, she fought insurance companies with the ferocity of a mother bear protecting her cub. Through it all, the refrigerator remained a stark reminder of their reality, sometimes stocked with just enough, more often nearly empty, a cold metal box that reflected their precarious existence. One night, when Malik was 7, he found her staring into that empty refrigerator, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. "Are you sad, Mom?" he asked, small hands slipping into hers. She wiped her eyes quickly. "Just tired, baby. We don't have food," he observed, his perception sharper than she'd realized. "We'll get some tomorrow," she promised. He studied her face, then said something that nearly broke her. "I'm not really hungry anyway." The lie was so obvious, so selfless, so clearly meant to protect her, that Tiana had to turn away to hide fresh tears. Her 7-year-old was trying to take care of her. That night, after tucking him in, she made a decision. Applied for a job at a fancy artisan bakery that had opened downtown. The pay was better, the hours more consistent. The commute was longer, but the stability might be worth it. When she got the job, Malik celebrated, as if she'd won the lottery. "Does this mean we can have bread all the time?" he asked, eyes bright with a child's simple hope. "Sometimes," she said carefully, not promising what she couldn't deliver. She didn't tell him the bakery had strict policies against employees taking unsold food. Didn't mention that the artisan loaves they'd bake and throw away daily cost more than she could afford to buy. She didn't tell him the company was called Vale Enterprises. Didn't say the name Lennox Vale was on her paycheck. Didn't explain that the man who built the empire had once built castles in the air with her. She protected him from that truth like all the others. Because Tiana Brooks didn't hate Lennox for leaving. Hate required energy she couldn't spare. What she resented wasn't him at all. It was Hope. Hope had betrayed her more consistently than any man. Hope had whispered promises life couldn't keep. Hope had left her hungry and alone more times than she could count. She'd learned to live without it, building her life on the solid ground of what is rather than the shifting sands of what might be. Until the night she took a loaf of bread, and the past she'd buried rose like a tide, threatening to sweep away everything she'd built on her own. Tiana froze in the middle of filling out her employment paperwork, pen hovering over the signature line. Vale Enterprises, founded by Lennox Vale. The gold-embossed logo at the top of the page seemed to pulse with accusation, with memory, with a past she'd buried beneath years of survival. "Is something wrong?" the HR representative asked, noticing her hesitation. Tiana's heart hammered against her ribs. "This company," she managed. "It's owned by Lennox Vale?" The representative nodded, pride evident. "Yes. He's a remarkable success story. Started with just an algorithm and built all this." She gestured to the sleek office around them. "You'll probably never meet him, of course. He stays on the executive floors." Never meet him. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they landed like a cruel joke. Have you ever found yourself trapped in a choice between dignity and necessity? When your past and your survival collide, which do you sacrifice? Tiana stared at the name on the paper. The name she'd forced herself not to speak for 8 years. The name she'd carefully kept from her son's curious questions. The name that belonged to a ghost who now, apparently, owned the building where she desperately needed to work. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed. She needed this job. Malik needed new asthma medication. The rent was already 2 weeks late. Pride was a luxury for people with options. As she buttoned her new uniform that first morning, Tiana made a promise to herself. This was just a job. Lennox Vale was just a name on her paycheck. The past would stay buried where she'd put it. But the building had other ideas. His presence was everywhere. His portrait hung in the lobby older, more polished, wearing success like a second skin. His voice played on training videos deeper now, but still with that cadence that once whispered dreams against her skin. His name gleamed on every uniform badge, every napkin, every receipt. Each reminder a paper cut on wounds that had never fully healed. Have you heard the founder's story? A coworker gushed during Tiana's first week. He was just a line cook with an idea. Now he's worth billions. Isn't that amazing? Tiana nodded, throat tight. She wanted to say, I knew him when his hands were burned from kitchen work, not soft from board meetings. I knew him when his smile was real, not practiced for cameras. I knew him when someday included me. Instead, she said, very impressive, and continued wiping down counters. The hardest part wasn't the reminders. It was the questions they sparked in her mind. Did he ever try to find me? Did he ever wonder what happened? If he knew about Malik, would it have mattered? Questions with no answers. Questions that changed nothing. Some mornings she arrived early enough to see black town cars pull up to the executive entrance. She never lingered to see if he might step out of one. Never allowed herself that weakness. Once, the entire bakery staff gathered to watch a news segment about Vale Enterprises' expansion. Tiana hung back, focusing on inventory while others crowded around the small break room TV. Lennox's voice filled the room. Our mission is eliminating waste while creating beauty. Every loaf matters. Nothing valuable should ever be thrown away. The irony burned in her chest. He'd thrown her away. He'd discarded their future without a backward glance. He'd deemed her less valuable than his ambitions. And now she stood in his building, wearing his logo, following his policies. "Isn't he dreamy?" sighed a young coworker. "And single? Can you believe no one's locked that down yet?" Tiana's laugh was short, bitter. "Maybe he's not the marrying type. I heard he dates models and executives." Another added, "No one stays around long." Something twisted inside Tiana. Not jealousy, but a strange, hollow vindication. So he hadn't replaced her with a happily ever after. His empire hadn't filled whatever emptiness drove him away. Small comfort, but comfort, nonetheless. Weeks passed. Then months. The job became routine. The pay was steady. Malik asked fewer questions about empty refrigerators. For the first time in years, Tiana allowed herself small exhales of relief, until the day she overheard managers discussing an executive visit. Mr. Vale himself. Carlene whispered excitedly, "First time he's toured this location." Ice flooded Tiana's veins. "When?" "Next Tuesday. Everything needs to be perfect. He's bringing investors." Tiana immediately requested the day off. "Family emergency," she claimed. Carlene denied it. All hands required. No exceptions. For days, Tiana rehearsed what she'd do if she saw him. How she'd keep her face neutral. How she'd avoid his gaze. How she'd protect the life she'd built without him from colliding with his reality. Tuesday came. The bakery gleamed under extra cleaning. Staff wore pressed uniforms with nervous smiles. Tiana volunteered to work in the back, away from the tour route. She held her breath as voices approached managers, executives, the distinctive cadence of investors impressed by profit margins. They passed the kitchen doorway without stopping. She exhaled slowly, tension draining from her shoulders. Safe. Separate. As it should be. That night, walking to the bus stop, she finally allowed herself to acknowledge the truth. A part of her had wanted to see him. Wanted him to see her. Wanted him to know she'd survived his absence. Thrived despite it. Wanted him to witness the strength he'd never valued. But another part, the mother part, the protective part, was profoundly relieved. Lennox Vale entering her life now would only complicate what she'd fought so hard to simplify. Would only threaten the careful story she'd constructed for Malik. Better to remain invisible. Better to stay in separate worlds. For 11 months, she managed exactly that. 11 months of working under his name without crossing his path. 11 months of building a life in the shadow of the life they might have shared. Then came the night of the bread. The night of hunger and desperation. The night she made a choice that would shatter the walls between their worlds. Standing in the hallway after being caught, waiting for security to escort her out, Tiana heard the elevator doors open behind her. She didn't need to turn around. Who didn't need to see his face? Some cellular recognition, some memory burned into her very bones, told her who stood there before he spoke a single word. Tiana. Her name in his voice after 8 years of silence. And just like that, everything she'd built, the walls, the distance, the careful separate existence, collapsed into a single, inescapable truth. The past was no longer past. Malik was 8 years old, soft-spoken, big eyes, skin the color of polished walnut, a smile that came slowly, like he was saving it for special moments. And every time he smiled, every single time Tiana saw Lennox. The first time she noticed, Malik was barely 3. He'd figured out how to stack blocks higher than his own head, concentrating with that same intensity Lennox once showed debugging code late into the night. When the tower stood complete, Malik's face broke into a proud grin, head tilted slightly to the right, exactly like his father's. Tiana had dropped a mug of tea, shattering ceramic across the kitchen floor. "You okay, Mommy?" Tiny Malik had asked, concern replacing pride. "Yes, baby," she'd lied. Heart racing. Just slippery fingers. But it wasn't slippery fingers. It was the ghost of Lennox Vale suddenly visible in her son's face, ambushing her when she least expected it. Have you ever looked at a child and seen the face of someone who broke your heart? Watched as familiar expressions, mannerisms, and traits emerged from an innocent who knows nothing of the pain those similarities cause? As Malik grew, the resemblances multiplied. The way he furrowed his brow when thinking hard. The way he tapped his fingers when impatient. The precise, careful way he built things. Forts from sofa cushions, stories from imagination, worlds from nothing. Lennox's son, through and through. But Tiana refused to acknowledge it, even to herself. Especially to herself. When co-workers commented on Malik's cleverness, during the rare times he visited her workplace, she'd say, "He gets that from my father." When teachers praised his natural leadership at school conferences, she'd nod and say, "My side of the family has always been determined." When neighbors noticed his height, always a head taller than other children his age, she'd laugh and say, "Must be all that milk I made him drink." Lies built on lies, small denials that accumulated like interest on a debt she couldn't repay. Because admitting Malik was becoming Lennox's mirror image meant admitting she hadn't escaped the past as completely as she pretended. That the man who left her pregnant and alone had never truly left at all. That he lived on in the child they created, haunting her daily with what-ifs and might-have-beens. The questions began when Malik turned 4. "Where's my daddy?" he asked one night during bath time, casual as asking about the weather. Tiana's hands stilled in his soapy hair. She'd rehearsed this moment for years, yet still felt unprepared. "Your daddy had to go away before you were born," she said carefully. "Why?" The simplest question, the hardest answer. "He had important work to do," she said. Not quite a lie, not quite the truth. "More important than me?" Her heart cracked. "He didn't know about you, baby. He left before I knew you were coming." Malik considered this, processing with that same analytical focus that was pure Lennox. "Will he come back when he knows about me?" Tiana's throat tightened. "I don't think so, sweetheart." "Is he dead?" "No, just gone." "Oh." Malik splashed the water gently. "Like Tommy's daddy?" "His mom says he's gone too." "Sort of like that. Half-truths. Almost lies. Protection wrapped in omission." As Malik grew older, the questions evolved. Became more specific. More difficult to dodge. "What's my daddy's name?" he asked at 6, looking up from homework. Tiana folded laundry, buying seconds to think. "Why do you want to know?" "For school. Miss Lewis says we need our parents' full names for the family tree project." Panic fluttered in her chest. "I'll talk to Miss Lewis. Not all families look the same." "But what's his name?" Malik persisted. "Your father's name isn't important," she said more sharply than intended. Then softer, "Just put my name twice, okay?" Malik's face fell, but he nodded. "Okay, Mom." The family tree came home with a single branch. Malik never asked about names again, but other questions came. Harder ones. "Do I look like him?" 7-year-old Malik asked, studying his line. Reflection one morning while brushing his teeth. Tiana froze in the bathroom doorway. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged. "I don't look exactly like you. So I must look like him too, right?" She stepped behind him, meeting his eyes in the mirror. Those eyes so like Lennox's, it sometimes hurt to look directly at them. "You look like you," she said firmly. "Perfectly, wonderfully you. Not a lie. Not the whole truth." Sometimes, at night, after Malik fell asleep, Tiana would study his face in the dim glow of his nightlight. The curve of his jaw, the set of his brow, the shape of his hands. All Lennox. In those quiet moments, She allowed herself to feel the full weight of raising Lennox Vale's son alone. The irony that she worked in his building, under his name, while his child slept in an apartment he'd never visited. The strange, circular fate that had brought her back into his orbit without his knowledge. The unfairness of it all squeezed her chest until she could barely breathe. "Do you think he'd like me?" Malik asked once, after a classmate's father came for career day. The question blindsided her. "What?" she managed, setting down the dinner plate she'd been washing. "My dad. Do you think he'd like me if he knew me?" Tiana knelt to her son's level, hands still wet with dishwater. "Malik, listen to me. Any father would be lucky to have you. You are smart and kind and brave and everything good in this world. But he didn't want me," Malik said quietly, the words revealing a wound she hadn't realized he carried. "No, baby. He didn't know about you. That's different. But you said he never tried to find you. If he loved you, wouldn't he have looked for you and found me too, out of the mouths of babes?" The precise question she'd asked herself 1,000 sleepless nights. "Sometimes, people make choices they can't take back," she said carefully. "It doesn't mean they're bad people, just that they chose a different path." "Could we find him?" Malik asked, hope brightening his eyes. Maybe he'd want to know about me now? The question hit like a physical blow, because she knew where Lennox was, had always known, could have walked into his building's lobby any day and asked to see him. But what would that accomplish? Disrupting Malik's stable life for a man who'd chosen ambition over everything else? Inviting disappointment and rejection into her son's world? "I don't think that's a good idea, baby," she said gently. "Our life is good just like it is, isn't it? Just you and me?" Malik nodded, but something in his eyes, something quiet and resigned, told her the answer hadn't satisfied him. That night, after he'd fallen asleep, Tiana stood in the doorway of his room, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Raising Lennox Vale's look-alike son was the cruelest irony life could have designed. Every milestone, every achievement, every stubborn argument, every brilliant idea, all of it reflected the man who should have been there to witness it. A man whose face stared out from magazines at grocery checkouts, whose name appeared on her paychecks, whose blood ran in her son's veins, whose absence shaped their lives like a black hole, invisible, but defining everything around it. How many children go to sleep tonight wondering about a parent they've never met, searching their own faces for traces of someone who exists as nothing more than a story, a ghost, an unanswered question? For 8 years, Tiana had protected Malik from the truth of his father's identity, had protected Lennox from the responsibility he'd never asked for, had protected herself from reopening wounds that had never fully healed. But standing there, watching her son sleep, Lennox's eyes, Lennox's jaw, Lennox's hands, Lennox's determination, she wondered how much longer the center could hold. How much longer before Malik's questions became demands? How much longer before coincidence brought Lennox face to face with his mirror image? How much longer before the careful, separate worlds she'd maintained collapsed into one complicated truth? She didn't know the answer, but she never imagined it would happen because of a stolen loaf of bread. The hunger got worse in winter. Tiana stared at the final notice. From the electric company, bold red letters, warning of imminent disconnection. Outside, snow fell in thick flakes, temperature dropping with each passing hour. Inside, the apartment's ancient heater struggled to push warmth through vents that rattled with each cycle. This was the third winter they'd barely survived. But this one felt different, worse, because this time, all the careful math, all the strategic planning, all the budget gymnastics had failed. The numbers didn't lie. Rent increase. $150 more monthly. Malik's asthma medication doubled in price. Bus fare up another quarter per ride. Grocery prices climbing weekly, and her income stagnant, frozen like the sidewalks outside. Hunger is a quiet monster. It doesn't arrive with dramatic roars and gnashing teeth. It creeps in silently, making itself at home in empty cabinets and hollow stomachs. It whispers rather than shouts. And its favorite prey are those too proud to admit they're being devoured. "Mom?" Malik called from the small living room where he did homework. "Can I have a snack?" Tiana's hands tightened on the notice. "Of course, baby. There's—" She paused, mentally inventorying their kitchen. "There's some crackers in the pantry. The same crackers from 3 days ago. The last food in the house. Besides half a box of cereal she was saving for his breakfast." She listened as he padded to the kitchen, opened the pantry, rustled the nearly empty package. "Found them," he called cheerfully, though they both knew there was nothing else to find. This was their new normal. Pretending. Him pretending the 6 stale crackers were enough. Her pretending she wasn't failing at the most basic parental duty, feeding her child. When had it gotten this bad? Was it when the grocery store cut her hours again? When Malik outgrew all his winter clothes at once? When the asthma attack sent them to the emergency room, generating bills that arrived in ever thicker envelopes? Or was it the slow, incremental erosion of stability, each small crisis taking another bite from their non-existent savings, until nothing remained but anxiety and empty cupboards? Tiana folded the disconnection notice carefully, tucking it into her purse where Malik wouldn't see it. She'd figure something out. She always did, even if figuring it out meant choosing between heat and food, between medication and rent, between her needs and his. No choice at all, really. The next morning, Tiana found Malik drinking water at the kitchen sink, glass after glass, stomach distended slightly from the liquid. "What are you doing, baby?" she asked, though she knew she'd done it herself. He looked up, caught, just thirsty. "Are you hungry?" "No," he lied, the words smooth from practice. "The water makes me full." Something cracked inside her chest, a fault line splitting wider with each sacrifice her 8-year-old made to protect her from the truth of their situation. "There's cereal," she said, voice tight. "I'm not really hungry," he insisted. "Save it for later." He was growing into a master of self-denial, of making less into enough, of shrinking his needs to match their reality. No child should have such skills. That afternoon, Tiana visited the social services office during her lunch break. She'd been there before, waiting on hard plastic chairs under flickering fluorescent lights, dignity eroding with each hour spent proving she deserved help. "I'm sorry, Miss Brooks," the overworked case manager said, barely looking up from her computer. "You make just over the threshold for SNAP benefits." "By $12, Tiana said, frustration bleeding into her voice. $12 a month disqualifies us?" The woman sighed. "The guidelines are strict, and the waiting list for exceptions is 9 months long. My son needs to eat tonight." A pause. The case manager looked up, really seeing her for the first time. "There's a food bank at First Methodist. They open at 4 on Thursdays. I work until 8. Street. Vincent's is Saturday mornings. I work weekends too." Another sigh. "There's emergency assistance, but you've already used your annual allocation." Tiana felt something dangerous rising in her throat. Not tears, but rage. At a system designed to exhaust those who needed it most. At arbitrary thresholds that ignored real life. At the absurdity that in one of the richest countries on earth, her child drank water to feel full. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked quietly. The case manager's eyes softened with genuine sympathy. "I wish I had better answers, Miss Brooks. I truly do." Tiana left with a pamphlet listing resources she'd already exhausted, and a hollow feeling that expanded with each step back to work. That evening, Malik's school sent home a note about an upcoming field trip. Cost, $25. Due date, Friday. Such a small amount. Nothing to some families, everything to theirs. Malik handed it to her cautiously, like it might explode. "Miss Reynolds says it's really important. We're going to the Science Museum." Tiana studied the form, mind racing through impossible calculations. $25 meant no bus fare for a week, meant walking miles in the cold, meant risking another asthma attack. But the hope in Malik's eyes, the careful, contained hope of a child who'd learned not to want too much, broke her. "We'll make it work," she promised. His smile, so rare these days, was worth whatever sacrifice it would require. That night, after Malik went to bed, Tiana counted the change in her purse. $2.17. She skipped dinner again. The gnawing in her stomach had become familiar, almost comforting in its constancy, a pain she could predict, unlike the cascading crises of poverty. In the morning, Malik insisted he wasn't hungry again, but his hands trembled slightly as he dressed for school, and dark circles shadowed his eyes so like Lennox's it sometimes startled her. "Eat the cereal," she insisted. "I already had breakfast at work." Another lie in their growing collection. But he needed the food more than she did. Children couldn't focus at school with empty stomachs, couldn't grow properly, couldn't thrive. And Malik deserved to thrive, even if she withered in the process. That afternoon she applied for emergency food stamps again. Denied again. Applied for an electricity bill extension. Granted, but with a fee that equaled 2 days' worth of groceries. The math remained merciless. The equations, unsolvable. "We'll find a way," she whispered to herself on the bus ride to her evening shift. "We always do." But the monster of hunger had grown too large to ignore, too powerful to fight with willpower alone. At the bakery that night, Tiana moved through her closing duties mechanically. Her body felt distant, operating on muscle memory, while her mind circled the same desperate thoughts. The bread surrounded her, artisan loaves crafted with care, displayed beautifully, priced at levels that made them art rather than sustenance. Customers paid $9 for sourdough boules that would feed her family for days. And at closing, these same perfect loaves went into trash bags. Company policy. No donations. No exceptions. Vale Enterprises rules. So much food. So much waste. As she packed the last warm loaf into the trash bag, a text from Mrs. Parker lit up her phone. "Malik says he's not feeling well. Might be hungry. Do you want me to make him something?" Shame and anger collided in Tiana's chest. Mrs. Parker knew. She'd seen the empty refrigerator when she watched Malik. Had probably been feeding him from her own limited supplies without mentioning it. "I'll be home soon," Tiana texted back. Just finishing up. She tied the Kamet Partersov trash bag, the warm bread inside still radiating heat against her hip. Bread that would feed Malik tonight. Bread that would stop the trembling in his small hands. Bread that company policy said should go to waste rather than hungry children. She looked at the security cameras blinking overhead. She looked at the bread, destined for dumpsters. She looked at her empty hands, calloused from work that still didn't pay enough to live. And in that moment, standing in the gleaming bakery built by the man who'd abandoned her, surrounded by food her son needed but couldn't have, Tiana Brooks made a decision that would change everything. She would take the bread, not because she wanted to steal, not because she didn't respect rules, but because hunger, her son's hunger, had finally grown louder than fear. "Sir, please don't fire me. I only took the leftover bread for my son." The hallway freezes around these words. The lights hum overhead, casting harsh shadows across two faces locked in. Unexpected reunion. The security cameras blink, recording a moment 8 years in the making. The tiled floor reflects their images. Her in a flour-dusted uniform, him in a tailored suit worth more than her monthly rent. And Lennox Vale, the billionaire who once promised her forever, stands perfectly still, staring at her like she's a ghost made flesh. "I'm not going to fire you," he says quietly. Tiana doesn't believe him. Can't believe him. 8 years of broken promises have taught her that words mean nothing without actions behind them. Why not? She challenges, chin lifting slightly. Company policy is clear. 0 tolerance for theft. How many truths do we avoid confronting because we're afraid of what they'll cost us? How many difficult conversations do we sidestep, hoping the problem will somehow resolve itself without our courage? You didn't steal, Lennox says, his voice unexpectedly gentle. You took food that was being thrown away, food your son needed. The kindness in his tone threatens her more than anger would have. Anger she could fight. Compassion might break her. Don't pretend to understand my situation, she says, each word precise, controlled. You don't know anything about my life. Then tell me, he says, taking a step closer. Help me understand. The hallway suddenly feels too small. The air between them charged with 8 years of unspoken words, unanswered questions, unresolved pain. There's nothing to understand, she says. I needed food. I took food. If you're not firing me, then I should get home to my son. She turns to leave, but his next words stop her cold. Did you know I owned this company when you applied? Tiana faces him again, something dangerous flashing in her eyes. Yes. The admission hangs between them. She watches surprise register on his face, quickly followed by confusion. Then, why? Because I needed the job? She cuts him off. Because Malik needed medicine. Because pride doesn't keep the lights on. The name Malik lands between them like a stone in still water. Ripples expanding outward, changing everything. Lennox's breath catches visibly. Malik, he repeats, testing the weight of the name on his tongue. My son, Tiana says firmly, claiming the child as hers alone. How old is he? Lennox asks, though they both know he already has the answer. 8. 1 word. 3 letters. A mathematical certainty that can no longer be ignored. 8 years. Lennox says softly, 8 years since I left. 8 years since you abandoned me. Tiana corrects, her voice hardening. 8 years since you chose your dreams over everything we planned together. I didn't know that I was pregnant? She laughs, the sound brittle. No, you didn't. Because you didn't stick around long enough to find out. Security guards hover at the end of the hallway, uncertain whether to intervene in this clearly personal confrontation between the company owner and a bakery employee. Lennox notices them and waves them away without taking his eyes off Tiana. We can't do this here, he says quietly. Not like this. Do what? Exactly, she challenges. Reminisce about old times? Compare notes on how life turned out? There's nothing to discuss, Lennox. There's everything to discuss, he counters, voice rising slightly before he controls it again. 8 years of everything. The lights flicker overhead, as if the building itself is responding to the electrical tension between them. Let me drive you home, he says, the request sounding more like a plea than a command. So, you can see where we live? Tiana asks, bitterness edging her voice. So you can feel better about yourself by offering charity? His expression tightens. So we can talk privately. About Malik. There's nothing to talk about. You know that's not true. And she does know. Has always known this moment would come eventually. That the careful separation she's maintained between past and present couldn't last. Forever. But she's not ready. Not tonight. Not when Malik is waiting hungry. Not when she's exhausted and vulnerable and terrified of what Lennox's return might mean for the fragile life she's built without him. I have to go, she says, taking a step backward. My son is waiting. Our son, Lennox says softly, the words slipping out before he can stop them. The hallway goes utterly silent. Tiana's eyes flash with something between fury and fear. No, she says, the word sharp as a blade. My son, you don't get to claim him now. Not after 8 years. Tiana, you weren't there, she continues, voice rising. You weren't there for morning sickness or childbirth or colic or first steps or fevers or nightmares or school or anything that matters. You don't get to walk in now and call him yours. Each accusation lands like a physical blow. Lennox absorbs them without defense, his face reflecting pain he doesn't try to hide. I would have been there, he says finally. If I'd known. Would you? She challenges. Really? Would you have given up your big dreams and investors for a pregnant girlfriend and a baby? Would you have chosen us over your algorithm? He doesn't answer immediately, and his hesitation tells her everything. That's what I thought, she whispers. She turns again to leave, but his next words stop her. I want to meet him. 3 words that shatter whatever composure she's maintained. Absolutely not, she says, turning back, eyes blazing. You think you can just walk into his life after 8 years? Disrupt everything he knows? Make promises you'll break when something more important comes along? I wouldn't. You already did? She cuts him off. Once was enough. The security guards glance at each other nervously, the confrontation clearly escalating beyond a simple employee disciplinary issue. Please, Lennox says, lowering his voice. Just let me help. Whatever you need, whatever he needs. We don't need your money. Then, what do you need? The question, sincere, desperate, catches her off guard. What do they need? What has she needed all these years? Stability, security, support. Someone to share the burden. Someone who wouldn't leave. But she's learned to provide those things herself, hasn't she? Learned to be everything Malik needs without depending on anyone else. Learned that waiting for rescue is a luxury she can't afford. Nothing, she says firmly. We need nothing from you. But even as she says it, she thinks of the empty refrigerator, the disconnection notice, the field trip money, Malik drinking water to feel full. Lennox studies her face, seeing the conflict behind her composure. At least let me drive you home, he says again, gentler this time. It's late, it's cold, and we need to finish this conversation. She hesitates, weighing pride against practicality. Fine, she says finally. Just a ride home, nothing else. Relief washes over his face. Thank you. As they walk toward the exit, an uncomfortable silence stretches between them. 2 people, connected by past and blood, but separated by years of divergent lives. In the car, Lennox turns to her before starting the engine. Tiana, he says quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. She looks at him, already knowing what's coming, already feeling the ground shifting beneath her carefully constructed world. Is Malik my son? The question hangs in the air between them, simple, direct, unavoidable. The moment of truth has arrived, and whatever answer she gives will change 3 lives forever. Is Malik my son? The question hangs between them in the dark car, the engine still silent. City lights playing across their faces through the windshield. Tiana stares straight ahead, watching strangers hurry past on the sidewalk, people with their own secrets, their own burdens, their own complicated truths. For 8 years, she's protected this particular truth, wrapped it in layers of silence, and half-stories, and careful omissions. But some truths cannot be contained forever. Some secrets demand to be spoken. Some questions deserve answers, no matter how painful. Yes, 1 word, 3 letters. A confession that changes everything. Yes, Len, she whispers, using his old name for the first time. You're his father. The impact of her confirmation is physical. Lennox's body jerks as if she struck him, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turn white. He makes a sound, not quite a word, not quite a sob, something primal escaping from deep in his chest. Have you ever witnessed the exact moment someone's entire understanding of themselves shatters? When their past and future collide with such force that nothing can ever be the same again? I didn't know, he finally manages, his voice breaking on each word. I know, she says quietly. I never told you. Why? The single word contains oceans of hurt, confusion, betrayal. Why didn't you tell me? Tiana turns to face him fully now, 8 years of justifications rising to the surface. Because you left, she says simply. You disappeared without a word. You changed your number. You moved without telling me. What was I supposed to do, Len? Chase after you with a pregnancy test? He shakes his head, struggling to process. You could have found me. I wasn't hiding. No, you were just building an empire. The bitterness in her voice is palpable. While I was building a human being. Lennox runs trembling fingers through his hair, that familiar gesture that still, after all these years, makes something twist in Tiana's chest. I would have stayed, he whispers. If I'd known, I would have stayed. Tiana's laugh is short, hollow. Would you? Would you really have given up your big break? Your investors? Your chance to escape poverty? For a girlfriend you'd already decided to leave behind? He opens his mouth, closes it. The silence is answer enough. That's what I thought, she says softly. You should have told me anyway, he insists, an edge entering his voice. Even if I wouldn't have stayed, I had a right to know. And Malik had a right to a father who wanted him, she counters. Not one who felt trapped. Not one who resented him for derailing his ambitions. The words hit their mark. Lennox flinches, eyes filling with tears he doesn't try to hide. 8 years, he whispers, the full weight of what he's missed crashing down on him. My God, I have a child. I have an 8-year-old son I've never met. The reality of it seems to physically alter him. The polished billionaire facade crumbles completely, revealing the young man she once loved, vulnerable, overwhelmed, lost. I missed everything, he continues, voice breaking. His birth, his first steps, his first words, his first day of school. Each milestone lands like an accusation, though Tiana doesn't voice them. She doesn't need to. The evidence of his absence has been written in become. Every moment of Malik's life, a blank space, where a father should have been. I didn't even know he existed, Lennox whispers, more to himself than to her. All this time, while I was building Vale Enterprises, my son was growing up without me. He's been fine, Tiana says, defensive instinct rising. I made sure of it. I don't doubt that. He looks at her, really looks at her, seeing the strength, the exhaustion, the fierce protectiveness that has defined her motherhood. You've done it all alone. I didn't have a choice. I'm so sorry, Tiana. The words sound inadequate even to his own ears. For leaving, for not knowing, for not being there, for all of it. She doesn't respond immediately. What could she say? That she forgives him? She doesn't. That it's okay? It isn't. Instead, she asks, what happens now? The question seems to startle him out of his spiral of guilt and regret. Now? I want to meet him, to know him, to be part of his life. Tiana's protective instincts flare. You can't just walk into his life after 8 years and expect everything to be perfect. I know that, he says quickly. I know this won't be easy, for any of us. But he's my son, Tiana, my blood, my responsibility. A responsibility you didn't ask for, but one I want now, he says firmly. One I won't walk away from. His phone buzzes in his pocket. He ignores it. It buzzes again, insistent. The outside world intruding on this moment of revelation. Your empire needs you, Tiana says, unable to keep the edge from her voice. My son needs me more. The words, simple, decisive, hang between them. Does he? Tiana challenges. He's survived 8 years without you. He has routines, stability. He doesn't know you exist, Len. To him, his father is just some abstract concept, not a real person with a name and a face. Lennox absorbs this, pain etched into every line of his face. What have you told him about me? That his father had to go away before he was born. That he didn't know about him. That it wasn't his fault. Thank you, he whispers, for not making him hate me. I never wanted him to feel unwanted, she says, even if that meant protecting you from the consequences of your choice. Something shifts in Lennox's expression, understanding dawning alongside the grief and shock. You've been protecting everyone, he says softly. Malik from feeling abandoned, me from responsibility I didn't ask for. yourself from depending on someone who left once before. Tiana doesn't confirm or deny this. She doesn't need to. I want to help, Lennox says, his voice steadier now. Not just with money. With everything. I want to be his father, Tiana. A real father. And if I say no? The question hangs between them, a test, perhaps, of how serious he truly is. Then I'll respect your decision, he says carefully. But I'll ask you to reconsider. Not for my sake, but for Malik's. Every child deserves to know where they come from. Who they come. What if he rejects you? What if he doesn't want a father who shows up 8 years late? Then I'll earn his trust, Lennox says simply, however long it takes. His phone buzzes a third time. With a frustrated sigh, he pulls it out, glances at the screen, then turns it off completely. The gesture, small but significant, doesn't escape Tiana's notice. What about your company? She asks. Your meetings? Your responsibilities? They can wait, he says. And for the first time tonight, he sounds like the boy she once loved, determined, focused, clear. This is more important. She studies him, searching for signs of the old Lennox beneath the polished exterior of Lennox Vale, billionaire CEO, trying to gauge if his transformation is genuine or merely the shock of discovery. Malik comes first, she says finally. His well-being, his stability, his happiness. If meeting you threatens any of that, it doesn't happen. I understand. Do you? She presses. Because he's not. A business acquisition, Lennox. He's not a merger or a deal you can negotiate. He's a child. My child. And if you walk into his life just to walk back out again, when it gets complicated or inconvenient or boring, the threat remains unspoken, but hangs in the air between them. I won't, Lennox promises, his voice steady despite the tears still glistening in his eyes. I'm not the same person who left 8 years ago, Tiana. I've built an empire, yes, but it's hollow, empty. Nothing I've achieved means anything compared to this, compared to him. She wants to believe him. Part of her, the part that still remembers loving him, desperately wants to believe him. But the mother in her, the protector, remains wary. Start the car, she says finally. My son is hungry, and we've kept him waiting long enough. As Lennox turns the key in the ignition, his hands still tremble slightly. The engine purrs to life, but he doesn't put the car in drive immediately. Instead, he stares straight ahead, a man confronting the most fundamental shift in his identity since the day he walked away from the diner. I have a son, he whispers, wonder and terror mingling in his voice. I'm a father. The reality of it seems to physically transform him, rearranging his features, his posture, his very sense of self before Tiana's eyes. Because Lennox Vale isn't just a billionaire anymore, isn't just a CEO, isn't just the man who left her behind. He's a father who has missed 8 years of his son's life. And nothing in his empire has prepared him for what comes next. Lennox leans against the wall of the parking garage, heart thundering in his chest. My son, he whispers again, the words foreign and fragile on his tongue. I have a son. Tiana watches him from a few feet away, her expression guarded. The concrete echoes their voices, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across their faces. Two people whose lives collided, separated, and now crashed together again with the force of 8 years between them. Malik isn't just a concept anymore, not just a mathematical possibility or a what if. He's real. 8 years old, waiting at home, hungry. Lennox's son. When was the last time you received a second chance you didn't deserve? That moment when grace appears unexpectedly in the ruins of your own making. We need to go, Tiana says, checking her phone. Mrs. Parker needs to leave for her night shift. Lennox straightens, trying to gather himself. Right. Yes. He fumbles with the car keys, hands still unsteady. The billionaire CEO, known for his composure in billion-dollar negotiations, can barely manage the simple mechanics of driving. As they pull out of the parking garage, silence fills the car. Not comfortable silence, but the heavy quiet of too many words waiting to be spoken. Too many years to account for. "What's he like?" Lennox finally asks, his voice hushed with wonder. Tiana glances at him, considering whether to answer, how much to share. "He's smart," she says finally, "curious about everything. Asks questions I don't always know how to answer." "Like me," Lennox says softly. "Like you," she acknowledges reluctantly. "He builds things, always figuring out how things work, taking them apart, putting them back together better." A small, broken smile touches Lennox's lips. "My mom always said I was born with a screwdriver in my hand. He draws constantly," Tiana continues, something in her softening despite herself. "Has notebooks filled with invention ideas. Cars that fly, buildings that float." "Does he?" Lennox hesitates, almost afraid of the answer. "Does he ever ask about me?" Tiana's hands tighten in her lap. "Of course he does. He's a child with no father. Children notice what's missing." The bluntness of her answer hits him physically. He grips the steering wheel tighter. "What do you tell him?" "That his father had to go away before he was born. That he didn't know about him." "Thank you," he whispers, "for not making him hate me." "It wasn't for you," she says quickly. "It was for him." No child should think they weren't wanted. They stop at a red light. The city's glow illuminating their profiles. Two people from the same past, living in entirely different worlds, now his of abundance, hers of scarcity. "I want to help," Lennox says, breaking the silence again. "Whatever you need, whatever he needs. Money, education, healthcare. We don't need your money." Tiana cuts him off, the edge returning to her voice. "Tiana, be realistic. You were stealing bread to feed him." "I was taking what was being thrown away," she corrects sharply. "And we've managed 8 years without your help. We don't need to start depending on you now." Lennox sighs, frustration edging his voice. "Why won't you let me help? Is your pride more important than his well-being?" The question lands like a slap. Tiana turns to him fully, eyes flashing. "Don't you dare question my priorities," she says, voice dangerously low. "Everything, every single thing I've done for 8 years has been for his well-being. While you were building empires and dating models, I was working 3 jobs to keep him fed. I was holding him through fevers when I couldn't afford medicine. I was explaining why we couldn't afford the same shoes as his classmates." Lennox absorbs each word like a physical blow, guilt etched across his features. "I'm sorry," he says quietly. "You're right, that was unfair." The light turns green. They drive on in silence. "This isn't about money," Lennox says finally, his voice steadier. "Not for me." "Then what is it about?" "Being his father," he says simply. "Knowing him, being part of his life, supporting him, yes, financially if needed, but more than that, being present, being someone he can count on." "He already has someone he can count on," Tiana says. "Me." "I know," Lennox acknowledges. "And you've done an incredible job, Tiana. Truly. What you've accomplished as a single mother, it's more impressive than anything I've built." She doesn't respond to the compliment, if that's what it is. "I can't imagine how hard it's been," he continues softly. "Doing everything alone, making every decision, carrying every burden, never having anyone to share the load. I managed." "Yes," he agrees. "You did. You're stronger than I ever was." The admission honest, without flattery, catches her off guard. "I ran away when things got hard," Lennox continues. "When choosing between ambition and commitment got uncomfortable, I took the easy path. Building a billion-dollar company wasn't exactly easy," Tiana points out, surprising herself by defending him. "Easier than raising a child alone," he counters. "In my world, failure means losing money. In yours, failure wasn't an option because a child's life depended on you succeeding." She doesn't disagree. Can't. They turn onto her street. the contrast between his world and hers made stark by the deteriorating buildings, the broken streetlights, the sense of struggle embedded in the very concrete. "I won't pretend I deserve a place in his life," Lennox says as they park across from her building. "I haven't earned it. But I want the chance to try. Not to replace you or undermine you, but to help shoulder what you've carried alone for too long." Tiana doesn't immediately respond. Through the windows of her second-floor apartment, lights glow warmly against the night. Somewhere in that apartment, Malik waits her son, his son, their son, unaware that his world is about to change. "What if I say no?" she asks. A genuine question rather than a challenge. Lennox considers this, his answer careful. "Then I'll respect your decision. But I'd ask you to think about what's best for Malik. Not what punishes me most or protects you best, but what gives him the fullest life possible." It's a fair point, and they both know it. "And if I say yes?" she asks. "What then? Weekend visits? Holiday cards? Child support checks?" "Whatever works best for him," Lennox says. "Whatever helps him adjust to having me in his life. I don't expect to go from stranger to father overnight. I know I'll have to earn his trust, his respect, his love, his honesty, the lack of entitlement." The willingness to follow her lead surprises her. "You've really changed," she observes quietly. "Not enough," he admits. "Not soon enough." But yes. She looks at him, really looks, trying to see beyond the expensive suit and successful exterior to the man beneath, trying to gauge whether this transformation is genuine or merely the shock of discovery. "I want to meet him," Lennox says, voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "Please, Tiana, let me meet my son." The request hangs between them, simple, direct, life-changing. Do we ever truly deserve second chances? Or is redemption less about what we deserve and more about what love requires? Tiana's phone buzzes in her hand. A text from Mrs. Parker. "Need to leave in 5 minutes." Malik says he's still hungry. Reality intrudes on this moment of decision. Her son needs her. Now. Not in some hypothetical future where she's figured out the perfect solution, but tonight, in this moment. "Come inside," she says finally. Decision made. Not to meet him, not tonight, but to see him, to understand what you're asking to be part of. Hope flashes across Lennox's face, cautious, uncertain, but undeniably there. "Thank you," he whispers. As they climb the stairs to her apartment, each step feels momentous. A journey not just upward, but forward, into a future neither of them planned, but both must now navigate. At her door, Tiana pauses, key in the lock. "Remember, you're just a friend from work tonight. Nothing more. I need time to prepare him for whatever this becomes." Lennox nods, understanding the boundaries. "And Lennox," she adds, voice low enough that only he can hear, "if you disappoint him, if you make promises you can't keep, I will never forgive you, and you will never see him again." The threat is delivered without anger, without malice, just the simple, unwavering promise of a mother who would burn the world to protect her child. "I understand," he says, and he does. She turns the key and opens the door to a life he's never known, a life he helped create but hasn't helped sustain until now. They leave the car behind, stepping into the cold night air. Tiana walks slowly, each step pulling the weight of decision behind her. The bread she stole, the catalyst for this collision of past and present, remains at the bakery, forgotten in the chaos of reunion. Malik will still be hungry when they arrive, but Lennox's presence has introduced a new hunger altogether, the appetite for truth that has been starved for 8 years. Lennox walks beside her, close enough to share the journey, but not close enough to touch. His polished shoes, Italian leather that cost more than Tiana's monthly rent, seem out of place on the cracked sidewalk of her neighborhood. "This is a dangerous area," he observes quietly, eyes tracking a group of teenagers huddled on a corner, passing something between them. "This is what affordable looks like," she replies. not breaking stride. Not everyone can live in penthouses. Have you ever walked a path knowing each step brings you closer to a moment that will forever divide your life into before and after? When you can feel the ground shifting beneath you with every footfall. The silence between them grows heavier as they approach her building. An ambulance wails in the distance. A car with heavy bass thumps past. A dog barks frantically from behind a chain-link fence. "What are you going to tell him?" Lennox finally asks. "About me?" Tiana keeps her eyes forward. "Tonight? Nothing. You're a friend from work, that's all. And later? I don't know yet." The honest admission hangs between them. For 8 years, Tiana has had answers for everything in Malik's world where babies come from. Why the sky is blue. Why they can't afford new shoes. But she has no script for this. How to tell her son that his father isn't just an abstract concept, but a flesh and blood man who suddenly appeared in their lives. "I'm afraid," she admits, the words escaping before she can stop them. Lennox turns to her, surprise flickering across his face at her vulnerability. "Of what?" "Everything," she says simply. "That he'll be angry with me for keeping you from him. That he'll be hurt you never looked for him. That he'll get attached and you'll disappear again. That you'll try to take him away from me." The last fear, the one she's never voiced aloud, lands between them like a live grenade. Lennox stops walking, forcing her to stop too. "I would never do that," he says, voice low and intense. "Never, Tiana." "You could," she counters. "You have resources I don't. Lawyers, money, influence. And you have 8 years of being his mother," he says. "Of being everything he's ever needed. I'm not trying to replace you. I'm trying to join you." The distinction matters. They both know it. They resume walking, passing a liquor store with bars on its windows, a laundromat with half its lights burned out, a corner bodega where a bored cashier scrolls through his phone behind bulletproof glass. "I know I'm late," Lennox says after a while. 8 years late. "I can't change that. But I'm here now. For how long?" The question escapes her before she can stop it, the core fear beneath all her defenses. "For as long as he'll have me," Lennox answers. "For as long as you'll allow me in his life. I'm not leaving again, Tiana." "People always say that," she says quietly, right before they leave. "I'm not people," he counters. "I'm his father. A title you haven't earned yet." "Then let me earn it," he says, an edge of frustration coloring his voice. "Let me try, at least." They turn onto her street, the dilapidated apartment building looming ahead. 3 stories of faded brick, windows with mismatched curtains, a security door with a broken lock. Nothing like the glass and steel tower where Lennox lives and works. "What will your board of directors think?" Tiana asks suddenly. "When they discover their billionaire CEO has a secret child with a bakery worker from the wrong side of town?" The question clearly catches him off guard. "I don't care what they think." "You will," she predicts. "When the press finds out, when your investors start asking questions, when your perfect image gets complicated by reality." "My image isn't perfect," he says. "And even if it were, it wouldn't matter. Malik matters. You matter." She almost believes him. Almost. "Your life is going to change," she warns as they approach the building's entrance. "Not just in the ways you're imagining, the happy ones with father-son bonding and teaching him to ride a bike, but in messy ways, complicated ways, ways that might cost you." "I know," he says, though. They both suspect he doesn't fully understand what he's agreeing to. "You can't just drop in when it's convenient or fun," she continues. "Children need consistency, reliability, presence." "I'll be there," he promises. "For everything. The good and the bad. Even when it interferes with board meetings, when investors are waiting, when millions of dollars are on the line." "Yes," he says without hesitation. Even then, she studies his face, looking for signs of the boy she once loved, in the man he's become, trying to gauge whether this transformation is genuine, or merely the adrenaline of discovery talking. I've spent 8 years building walls around our life, she says softly. Protecting him, protecting myself. And now you're asking me to tear them down. Not tear them down, he corrects gently. Just open a door. Just let me in. They reach the front of her building. Someone has spray-painted obscenities across the brick. The security light flickers erratically, casting strange shadows across their faces. Tiana hesitates, key in hand. This moment, this threshold, represents more than entering a building. It's crossing a boundary between separate worlds, separate lives, separate truths. Once crossed, nothing will ever be the same again. When we go inside, she says, voice barely above a whisper, you'll see how we live. The reality of what these 8 years have been for us. Not the sanitized version I've described, but the actual, physical truth of our existence. I understand, he says, though his eyes betray uncertainty. No, she corrects him. You don't. You can't. Until you see it. He nods, accepting the correction without defense. Malik might still be hungry, she continues. We might not have food in the house. The heat might be too low because I keep it down to save on bills. These are things he's used to, but they might shock you. I grew up poor too, Tiana, he reminds her gently. Before everything, before Vale Enterprises, I know what empty refrigerators look like. But you've forgotten, she says. 8 years of luxury changes perspective. He doesn't argue. Can't. She takes a deep breath, decision solidifying. Remember what I said. Tonight, you're just a friend from work. Nothing more. I understand. And Lennox. She meets his gaze directly. Don't make promises to him. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely certain you can keep them. The warning lands with its intended weight. Lennox nods, solemn. I won't, he says. I promise. The irony of making a promise about not making promises isn't lost on either of them. Tiana turns the key in the lock. The door creaks open, revealing a dim lobby with peeling wallpaper and the faint smell of mildew. The elevator has an out-of-order sign taped to it, the same sign that's been there for months. 3rd floor, she says, heading for the stairs. Hope you don't mind climbing. Lennox follows her into the stairwell, each step taking them higher not just in the building but in the stakes of what comes next. Each floor they ascend represents another layer of truth being revealed, another piece of reality being faced. At the 2nd floor landing, Tiana pauses, suddenly overwhelmed by what they're about to do, by the irreversible nature of the step they're taking. Are you sure about this? She asks, turning to face him. Really sure? Because once he knows you exist, once he knows who you are, there's no going back. You can't unbecome his father. Lennox meets her gaze, and for a moment, she sees fear in his eyes too. The terror of responsibility, of consequence, of love with no escape clause. I'm sure, he says, voice steady, despite the emotion behind it. I want to know my son. They continue climbing, reaching the 3rd floor. Tiana leads him down a narrow hallway, with scuffed floors and walls, in desperate need of paint. She stops at apartment 3C, key poised at the lock. From inside, they hear a child's voice. Malik's voice call out, Mom? Is that you? Mom? Is that you? The voice small, hopeful, tinged with relief, filters through the door. Lennox's breath catches in his throat. His son's voice. The first time he's ever heard it. Tiana unlocks the door with trembling hands, shooting Lennox one final warning look before pushing it open. Yes, baby. It's me. They step inside, and Lennox's world shifts on its axis. The apartment is small, painfully small. A living room that doubles as dining space. A kitchenette with chipped counters. Doors leading to what must be bedrooms. The furniture is mismatched but clean. Worn but cared for. Drawings cover the refrigerator. Bright spots of color against the beige walls. And there, curled on a threadbare sofa with a blanket over his legs and a book open beside him, is Malik. Lennox stops breathing. The boy is beautiful. Skin the color of burnished walnut. Hair cropped close to his head. Lennox's eyes wide with curiosity as they take in the stranger standing behind his mother. Some moments in life burn themselves into memory with such clarity that they forever divide existence into before and after. This is one of them. Who's that? Malik asks, sitting up straighter, the book sliding to the floor. Tiana crosses to him, dropping a kiss on his forehead. This is Mr. Vale. He works at the bakery with me. Lennox barely hears her introduction. His entire being is focused on absorbing every detail of this child. His child who has existed for 8 years without his knowledge. The shape of his ears, the set of his shoulders, the way his eyebrows draw together slightly in curiosity, exactly like Lennox's own expression when confronted with something new. Hi, Malik, he manages, his voice hushed with wonder. It's nice to meet you. The boy studies him with that same careful scrutiny. You're the boss, he says. Not a question, but a statement. Your name is on Mom's uniform. Tiana tenses, but Lennox nods, impressed by the observation. Yes, I am, but your mom and I used to be friends a long time ago. Malik processes this, head tilting slightly. Did you bring any bread? Mom said she might bring some tonight. The question, so innocent, so telling, cracks something open in Lennox's chest. This child, his son, is hungry, has been waiting for food that Tiana was prevented from bringing home because of company policy. His company policy. I'm sorry. Lennox says, the apology encompassing far more than the missing bread. Not tonight, but I promise. He stops, remembering Tiana's warning about promises. I mean, next time, definitely. Tiana moves to the kitchen, opening cabinets, searching. Let me see what we've got, baby. Malik's eyes stay on Lennox, studying him with an intensity that feels familiar. Why are you wearing such fancy clothes for a bakery? Tiana freezes mid-search. Lennox glances down at his tailored suit, suddenly aware of how out of place he looks in this apartment, in their lives. I had a meeting earlier, he explains, loosening his tie slightly. Important people who expect fancy clothes. Malik nods sagely. Like on career day. Joshua's dad wore a suit too. He's a lawyer. The casual comparison to another father figure sends a pang through Lennox's chest. Tiana returns from the kitchen, defeat evident in her posture. We don't have much, Malik. There's a little cereal left. Or I can make you some toast with cinnamon. I'm not really hungry anymore. Malik lies. The words practiced, reflexive. It's a kindness meant to protect his mother from feeling like she's failed him. The maturity of it, the empathy strikes Lennox like a physical blow. Actually, Lennox says, reaching for his phone, I'm pretty hungry myself. Would it be okay if I ordered some food for all of us? Tiana shoots him a warning. Look, pride warring with necessity. But Malik's eyes light up. Can we get pizza? He asks, hope bleeding into his voice. With pepperoni? Malik, Tiana says quietly. We can't ask Mr. Vale to... Pizza sounds perfect. Lennox interrupts gently. Is that okay, Tiana? Their eyes meet over Malik's head. A silent negotiation between pride and hunger. Between independence and acceptance. Finally, she nods once, a small concession. As Lennox orders, Malik slides off the couch and moves to a small desk in the corner, returning with a notebook. These are my inventions, he announces, holding the book out to Lennox. Mom says they're really good. Lennox accepts the notebook with reverence, understanding the trust being offered. May I look? Malik nods, watching carefully as Lennox opens to pages filled with drawings, cars with wings, buildings that float on water, machines with purposes he can only guess at. Each page vibrates with imagination, with possibility, with the same creative energy that drove Lennox to build his first algorithm. These are amazing, Lennox says, meaning it. You have a brilliant mind, Malik. The boy beams, soaking in the praise from this stranger who somehow feels familiar. Mom says I get it from my grandpa, but she doesn't have any pictures of him. Another lie meant to protect. Another omission in the carefully constructed story of Malik's origins. Tiana busies herself in the kitchen, avoiding Lennox's gaze. "This one's my favorite," Malik says, pointing to a drawing of what looks like a grocery store on wheels. "It's a market that comes to people who can't get to the store, like Mrs. Parker when her legs hurt, or old Mr. Washington downstairs. The compassion behind the invention, the desire to solve real problems faced by real people, brings unexpected tears to Lennox's eyes." That's really thoughtful, Malik. And smart. The pizza arrives faster than it should have. The benefits of Lennox's name and generous tip, they eat at the small table. Malik chattering about school, friends, a science project on renewable energy. Lennox absorbs every word, cataloging, details, building a mental image of the life he's missed. Tiana watches them warily, like someone monitoring an experiment that might explode at any moment. After his second slice, Malik tilts his head, studying Lennox again. "Your eyes look like mine," he says suddenly. The observation, innocent, accurate, devastating in its simplicity, sends the room into silence. Lennox glances at Tiana, unsure how to respond. "People often look similar, baby," she says carefully. "Remember how you and Zoe both have the same dimple when you smile?" But Malik isn't deterred. "No, but it's more than that." He turns to Lennox. "Did you know my dad?" The question lands like a grenade in the small apartment. Tiana's face drains of color. Lennox's heart hammers against his ribs. "Malik, that's enough questions for tonight," Tiana says, voice tight. "It's getting late." "But Mom," "No buts. Go brush your teeth and get ready for bed." Malik sighs dramatically, but obeys, disappearing into the bathroom. The moment the door closes, Tiana turns to Lennox, voice low, urgent. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. He's too smart, too observant. He's incredible," Lennox whispers. "He's absolutely incredible, Tiana." Something in his tone, the raw wonder, the undisguised love already forming, softens her expression. "Yes," she agrees. "He is." When Malik returns, pajama-clad and yawning, Lennox knows his time is ending. This first precious encounter, drawing to a close. "It was very nice to meet you, Malik," he says, voice steadier than he feels. "Thank you for showing me your inventions." Malik studies him again, that intense gaze that mirrors his own. "Will you come back sometime?" The question, simple, hopeful, loaded with implications, hangs between them. Lennox looks to Tiana, waiting for her lead. After a moment that feels like eternity, she nods. Just once. Just slightly. But enough. "Yes," Lennox says. The word, feeling like a vow. "If that's okay with your mom, I'd like that. Very much." "Cool," Malik says, the casual acceptance of a child who doesn't yet understand the weight of this moment. "Maybe you can help me with my new flying car design. Mom's good at art, but not so much at engines." Tiana laughs softly, the sound breaking some of the tension. "Off to bed, inventor. School tomorrow." After goodnight kisses and one last curious look at Lennox, Malik disappears into his bedroom. Tiana walks Lennox to the door, both of them moving quietly, reverently, like people leaving a sacred space. In the hallway, away from Malik's ears, Lennox finally speaks. "Thank you," he whispers, voice thick with emotion, "for letting me see him, for raising him to be so perfect." "He's not perfect," Tiana corrects gently. "He's stubborn and asks too many questions and leaves his socks everywhere. But he's good. Down to his bones, he's good." "Like his mother," Lennox says. She doesn't acknowledge the compliment. "This doesn't mean I've decided anything," she warns. "About you being in his life permanently. About telling him who you are. I need time to think." "I understand," Lennox says, and he does. "Whatever you decide, whatever boundaries you set, I'll respect them. I just want a chance, Tiana. A chance to know him. A chance to help. A chance to be what I should have been all along." She studies him in the dim hallway light, searching for sincerity, for commitment, for the strength to keep this new promise. One day at a time, she says finally. That's all I can offer right now. It's more than I deserve, he acknowledges. As he turns to leave, Tiana calls after him softly. Lennox. He pauses, looking back. He does have your eyes, she admits. I've seen them looking back at me for 8 years. The confession, small but significant, feels like the first brick removed from a wall that has stood between them for too long. Outside, walking back to his car, Lennox looks up at the apartment building at the window where his son now sleeps, dreaming of inventions and flying cars and a strange man who appeared from nowhere. 8 years lost, a lifetime ahead. And for the first time since leaving the diner that rainy night, Lennox Vale feels something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not the ambition that drove him to build empires. Not the hunger that pushed him to accumulate wealth. But the quiet, profound hope that comes from finding what was missing all along. A chance to be a father to his son. A chance to help the woman who raised him alone. A chance to build something more valuable than any company. A family.